Story 1, The Merge. The lights had been following Robert Hayes for 47 miles when he realized they weren't above him anymore. They were inside the cab, not reflecting off the windshield, not casting shadows. Inside, floating in the air between his face and the dashboard like drops of luminescent oil suspended in nothing, pulsing in rhythm with something he couldn't hear but could feel in his teeth. He'd been driving Interstate 80 through Nebraska on December 18th, 2023, hauling refrigerated pharmaceuticals from Omaha to Salt Lake City, when the sky split open at 2:47 a.m. and began bleeding light. Robert had been pulling loads for 19 years, the last 12 for the same logistics company out of Des Moines. 42 years old, divorced for 6, 2 kids he saw every other Christmas if the routes aligned. The road had become more home than any apartment he'd rented, the truck's sleeper berth more familiar than any bed. He knew the particular rhythm of his Freightliner Cascadia, the way the engine hummed through the steering wheel, the blind spots in his mirrors. He knew every sound the reefer unit made, could diagnose problems by ear alone. What he was seeing now violated everything he knew. The lights had started as a cluster on the horizon, the kind of thing you might mistake for a radio tower or distant farm equipment. But they moved wrong. They moved like thoughts, darting and hesitating, approaching in surges that had nothing to do with velocity or momentum. Within 20 minutes they were directly overhead, and that's when Robert's radio started picking up the sound. Not static, not voices. Something that existed in the space between both. Syllables that dissolved before completing. Words that felt like they were being spoken backward through water. He'd tried changing channels, M to CB to FM and back. Every frequency carried the same degraded transmission, and with each repetition it grew clearer, more insistent. The language, if it was language, began to sound almost familiar, like English words stripped of their consonants and stretched across too many seconds. He reached to turn the radio off completely, and that's when his hand went through the dial. Not past it, through it. His fingers phased into the plastic face of the radio unit for a fraction of a second, and he felt the electronic components inside, felt the current running through circuits, felt the speakers vibrating with that wrong sound. He yanked his hand back with a shout, staring at his fingers. They looked normal, solid, real. He grabbed the steering wheel with both hands, knuckles whitening, focusing on the road. The center line was still there. The mile markers were still passing. The physical world was still intact. But the lights were inside now. 3 of them, each about the size of a softball, drifting through the cabin like they were mapping it. One passed within inches of Robert's face, and the proximity brought a smell, ozone and copper, and something organic that reminded him of the time he'd hauled a trailer of spoiled meat in July, that sweet-rotten stench of decomposition. But this was different. This was the smell of something breaking down that was never meant to break down. Breaking down in ways that matter shouldn't be able to break down. The temperature in the cab began to fluctuate wildly. His breath fogged the air 1 second, then he was sweating the next, then cold again, cycling every 15 or 20 seconds. The lights pulsed in opposite rhythm to the temperature changes. Cold when they brightened, hot when they dimmed. Robert's skin prickled with each cycle, hair standing up on his arms, a pins and needles sensation that went deeper than skin, like his nerves themselves were being teased apart and rearranged. He grabbed his CB mic. "Breaker, breaker, this is Nighthawk on I-80 eastbound at mile marker 312, anybody copy?" His voice sounded strange in his own ears, delayed by a fraction of a second, like hearing himself on a bad phone connection. The CB hissed back at him with that same dissolution language, but now it was forming patterns, repeating sequences, learning. One of the lights drifted toward the passenger seat and began to elongate, stretching vertically like taffy being pulled. Robert watched in his peripheral vision, not daring to take his eyes fully off the road as the light formed a roughly humanoid shape. 7 feet tall, impossibly thin, composed entirely of that pulsing luminescence. It didn't have features, no eyes, no mouth, but Robert felt it looking at him, studying him. The CB crackled. A word emerged from the dissolution. Stop. Fuck that, Robert muttered, pressing harder on the accelerator. The Freightliner's engine roared, pushing 75, then 80. The speed limit was 70, but Robert didn't care. He needed distance from wherever this started, needed to outrun whatever was happening. The light figure in the pass-end. Our seat tilted what might have been its head. The other 2 lights began to orbit it, faster and faster, leaving trails that didn't fade. The trails began to form symbols in the air, geometric patterns that hurt to look at, angles that seemed to fold in on themselves in ways that made Robert's eyes water. His vision started to double, then triple. The road ahead multiplied into overlapping versions of itself, each slightly offset, and he had to blink hard to force them back into one. That's when he saw the other trucks. Not on the road, in the road, occupying the same space as his truck but visible only as transparent afterimages. Dozens of them, hundreds, all different makes and models, from ancient Peterbilts to modern Volvos, all driving the same stretch of highway, all phasing through each other and through him. And in each cab, Robert could see the driver, could see himself. Not drivers who looked like him, himself, Robert Hayes. Different ages, younger, older, some versions scarred in ways he wasn't, some wearing clothes he'd never owned, but unmistakably him. All driving, all alone, all experiencing this same moment from slightly different angles. The light figure reached toward him, and Robert felt his chest tighten. His heart stuttered, skipped a beat, then another. The pain that shot through his left arm was immediate and intense, the classic warning sign every trucker feared. But beneath the pain was something else, a sensation of being opened, examined, turned inside out without any actual movement. His hands were still on the wheel. His foot was still on the accelerator. But part of him was elsewhere now, stretched across all those overlapping realities, experiencing every version of this moment simultaneously. He could feel the differences. In one version, his right shoulder ached from an old injury he'd never actually sustained. In another, his left knee throbbed from a break that had never happened. In yet another, his hands bore scars from burns that existed in no memory he possessed. The light figure's hand, if it could be called a hand, passed through his chest. Robert gasped, but not from pain, from understanding. The thing wasn't attacking him, it was reading him, reading every version of him that existed across the fold spaces between realities, reading his history, his choices, his road. Every decision he'd made that led him to this exact point on this exact highway at this exact time. And with each reading, each scanning pass, those versions began to blur together. Robert felt himself remembering things that hadn't happened. A divorce for different reasons. Children with different names. Routes he'd never driven to cities he'd never seen. Each memory layered over the originals, not replacing them but existing alongside them, contradicting them, creating a palimpsest of experience that human memory wasn't designed to hold. The CB squawked again, and this time the word was clear. Merge. No, Robert said, but his voice came from multiple throats at once, each slightly different in pitch and timbre. No, no, no. The light figure pressed deeper, and Robert felt the boundaries dissolving. The walls between those overlapping realities grew thin, grew transparent, grew permeable. He could feel other Roberts trying the same thing, accelerating, turning, even one who'd pulled over and was running into the frozen fields alongside the highway. None of it mattered. The lights found every version. The merge was happening regardless of choice. His vision fragmented completely. He was driving at 80 miles per hour and 65 and stopped on the shoulder and crashed into the median and lifted off the ground entirely, truck and trailer rising into that wound in the sky. All simultaneously, all equally real. The pain in his chest intensified, but it was no longer just his chest. It was every chest, every version of the heart attack or panic attack or whatever this was, all happening at once. The dashboard clock read 3:14 a.m. It read 2:58 a.m. It read 4:22 a.m. Time itself was merging, folding, bleeding together like wet watercolors. Robert tried to scream, but the sound came out as that same dissolution language, his human voice breaking down into component frequencies, consonants dissolving, meaning scattering. The last thing he remembered thinking with anything resembling clarity was a question. How many times had this already happened? The light figure withdrew its hand. The cabin flooded with that luminescence, so bright Robert should have been blinded but instead saw everything. Saw the atomic structure of the steering wheel, saw the individual molecules of air between him and the windshield, saw the quantum foam underlying reality itself. And in that foam he saw the scars. The places where realities had been sutured together, where versions of the world had been merged and merged again, countless times, reshaping existence into something closer to what the lights needed it to be. The merge G completed at 3:33 a.m. across all timelines simultaneously. When the Nebraska State Patrol found the truck at 6:15 a.m., it was parked perfectly on the shoulder at mile marker 312. Engine still running, reefer unit maintaining its steady 38 degrees, cargo intact and undisturbed. The driver's seat was empty. The driver's door was locked from the inside. Robert Hayes' wallet, phone, and logbook were all accounted for, sitting neatly on the passenger seat. The CB radio was tuned to an impossible frequency, one that didn't exist on any standard band, and was broadcasting a single word on loop: complete. A search of the surrounding area found nothing. No tracks in the snow, no signs of struggle. The truck's GPS showed no deviations from the route, no stops, no unexplained detours. The reefer unit's temperature log showed perfect stability throughout the night. Every system reported normal operation. 3 weeks later, a different driver reported seeing lights over the same stretch of highway. When dispatchers asked him to describe them, he started speaking in a language that sounded almost like English but wasn't quite, words that dissolved before they could complete. The transmission lasted for 47 seconds before cutting to static. The investigation into Robert Hayes' disappearance remains open but inactive. His ex-wife received a postcard from Salt Lake City dated December 24th, postmarked from a post office that had been closed for renovation during the entire week in question. The handwriting was Robert's. The message read, "Made the delivery, everything merged perfectly. See you in every version. R." She never told the police about the postcard. Some things, she decided, were better left unreported. But sometimes, late at night, she looks up at the December sky and sees lights moving in patterns that shouldn't be possible. And she thinks about all the versions of her life she might be living simultaneously, all the Roberts who might have made it home, and all the ones who didn't. The lights are still there, still searching, still merging. The road goes on forever, and somewhere on it, in the space between one reality and another, Robert Hayes is still driving, still trying to outrun what's already inside him, while the lights catalog every version of his journey and prepare for the next merge. The sky bleeds, the road receives, the pattern continues. Asterisk Story 2, The Passenger Manifest. Patricia Sullivan's cargo was screaming when she picked it up from the warehouse in Duluth, Minnesota. And that was wrong because the manifest listed it as industrial ceramics. Ceramics don't scream. The sound wasn't coming through the trailer walls. It was coming from the manifest itself, from the paper clipped to her dashboard, tiny voices emanating from the printed words like the document was a doorway to somewhere else. December 9th, 2023, 11:43 p.m., and Patricia was already 6 hours behind schedule because of a jackknifed semi near Superior. And now this. She'd been hauling freight for 14 years, specialized in less-than-truckload shipments across the upper Midwest. 38 years old, never married, lived in a studio apartment in Minneapolis that she saw maybe 4 days a month. Her Kenworth T680 was 10 years old, purchased used, maintained meticulously, and had never given her a day of trouble. She ran clean on her logs, never pushed her hours, never cut corners. Professional, reliable. Boring, her dispatcher called her, which she took as a compliment. The manifest had appeared normal when she'd signed for it at the loading dock. Standard waybill, shipping from Duluth to Kansas City, delivery deadline of December 12th, 23 individual crates listed as ceramic industrial components, total weight 18,000 pounds. She'd watched the dock workers load it, seen the crates through the open trailer door, wooden boxes stamped with handling instructions in English and what might have been Chinese or Japanese. Nothing unusual. Nothing to indicate that 8 miles down Highway 53, the paperwork would start making sounds. The screaming started as a whisper. Patricia thought it was wind through a crack in the door seal, that high-pitched whistle that sometimes developed. But it persisted even when she closed all the vents, even when she turned off the heater. The sound grew clearer, more distinct, resolving into what were unmistakably human voices. Dozens of them, hundreds, all screaming the same thing in unison, a single word stretched and distorted but recognizable. Don't. Patricia pulled onto the shoulder, hazards on, and grabbed the manifest. The paper was warm, body temperature warm. The screaming intensified when she touched it, and she could feel vibration through the paper, like the voices were trying to push through from the other side. She held it up to the dome light, looking for anything that might explain this. Microfilm embedded. Electronics, some kind of prank. The paper was paper, standard printer stock, but the words were moving. Not the whole document, just the cargo descriptions. The line that read industrial ceramic components, fragile handle with care, was reforming itself letter by letter, words rearranging into new configurations. She watched as ceramic became osseous, as components became fragments, as fragile became sentient. The new description read, industrial osseous fragments, sentient, handle with care. Then it changed again. Industrial human remains, conscious, do not deliver. Patricia's mouth went dry. She looked up at the trailer in her mirrors, dark and silent on the shoulder, exactly as it should be. Just a 53-foot box containing cargo she couldn't see, cargo that was supposed to be ceramics. The manifest changed again. They are aware they are dead. They are aware you are carrying them. They want out. She grabbed her phone, pulled up her dispatcher's number. No signal. Full bars, LTE indicator showing, but when she tried to call it, went immediately to a recorded message. The number you are trying to reach exists in a location that is no longer accessible. Please hang up and try your call again. She tried 911, same message. She tried her sister in Fargo, same message. Every number in her contacts, same impossible recording. The manifest was changing faster now, cycling through descriptions. 23 crates containing the remains of 23 drivers who accepted this load before you. They accepted the revised manifest. They delivered to the revised destination. They became the cargo. Patricia threw the manifest onto the passenger seat like it had burned her. Her heart hammered against her ribs. This wasn't real, couldn't be real. 14 years on the road, she'd heard every trucker legend, every ghost story, every tale of phantom hitchhikers and vanishing diners and roads that led nowhere. Stories, entertainment to pass the miles, not real, never real. But the manifest was still changing, and now it was showing her a map. Not the route from Duluth to Kansas City. A different route. Highway 53 south to County Road 7 east for 13 miles, then onto an unmarked road that Patricia knew for a fact didn't exist because she'd driven this area 100 times. The route terminated at a location labeled simply, Warehouse. Deliver by 3:00 a.m. You will be received. The clock on her dashboard read 12:17 a.m., 2 hours and 43 minutes. Patricia put the truck in gear and pulled back onto the highway, heading south toward Duluth, back the way she came. She'd return the load, refuse the delivery, take the hit on her record. Better a violation than whatever this was. But 3 miles north, she found the road blocked, not by traffic, by light. The same lights that had been in the December sky for the past week. The ones the news kept calling drones or satellites or weather phenomena were now hovering directly over the highway, low enough that their glow illuminated the pavement like daylight. 3 of them arranged in a triangle, perfectly still. And beneath them, the road was gone, not destroyed, gone. The asphalt simply ended, giving way to nothing. A void that her headlights couldn't penetrate, a darkness so complete it seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. She hit the brakes. The Kenworth shuddered to a stop 50 feet from the edge of nothing. The lights pulsed once in unison, and Patricia felt the pulse in her chest, like a sound below hearing, a pressure wave that made her lungs itch. The manifest on the passenger seat began to glow with the same luminescence as the lights above. Patricia threw the transmission into reverse. The truck didn't move. The engine was running, drive shaft engaged, but the wheels might as well have been welded to the pavement. She tried again, more throttle, feeling the engine strain. Nothing. The trailer brakes weren't set. The suspension wasn't locked. The truck simply refused to move backward. Forward was the only option. The manifest spoke again, louder now, no longer just screaming but forming words. The warehouse is expecting you. The cargo must be delivered. The cargo has already been delivered. You are now part of the manifest. Accept the revision. Patricia yanked the parking brake, killed the engine, and threw open the door. She'd walk back to Duluth, flag down another driver, get help. But when her boot hit the pavement wasn't there. Her foot went through the solid asphalt like it was water, and she felt cold. The cold of deep space, of absolute zero, of the temperature between stars. She jerked her leg back into the cab, gasping, staring at her boot. It was covered in frost, ice crystals forming in intricate patterns that spread and grew as she watched, creeping up her leg. She kicked the boot off, threw it out the door. It hit the pavement and shattered like glass, fragments scattering and solving into that same void that had consumed the road ahead. The ice on her leg stopped spreading at her ankle but didn't recede. Her foot was numb, beyond pain, a dead weight at the end of her leg. The lights descended. They passed through the roof of the cab without resistance, 3 spheres of luminescence that brought that smell, ozone and copper and rotting sweetness. Patricia pressed herself against the driver's door as far from them as the cabin allowed. The spheres began to orbit each other, faster and faster, and in the space between them something formed. An image, a projection, a memory that wasn't hers. She saw herself, Patricia Sullivan, standing in a warehouse she'd never been to, signing a manifest she'd never seen, accepting cargo from workers whose faces were blurred and indistinct. Saw herself driving a route she hadn't driven, delivering to a location she'd never heard of. Saw herself opening the trailer door and stepping inside into the darkness between the crates. Saw the crates opening. saw what was inside. Not ceramics, not fragments, vessels. 23 human-shaped vessels made of something that looked like ceramic but moved like flesh, each one containing the compressed remains of a person who'd been reduced to their essential components and reformed into something that could be stored, shipped, delivered. And she saw those vessels open their eyes, if they were eyes, and look at her with recognition, with desperation, with a hunger that had nothing to do with sustenance and everything to do with the need to be whole again. Saw herself becoming the 24th vessel. The vision ended. The lights withdrew upward, back through the roof, back to their position above the highway. And ahead, where the void had been, the road reappeared, not the same road. This one was narrower, poorly maintained, marked with signs she didn't recognize. County Road 7, according to the nearest marker, the revised route. Patricia looked at the clock. 1:33 a.m. She'd lost over an hour, but it had felt like seconds. The manifest was changing again, and this time it was showing her a choice. Two versions of the document, side by side. The left version showed the original route, Duluth to Kansas City, delivery in 3 days, payment on completion, return to normal life. But that version was fading, growing transparent, like an old photograph left in the sun. The right version showed the revised route, 13 miles on County Road 7 to the warehouse that shouldn't exist, delivery in 90 minutes and payment listed as continuation. You will be preserved. You will remain aware. You will become part of the cargo, and the cargo will become part of the next manifest. The cycle continues. The delivery is eternal. Both versions had a signature line. Both were waiting for her to choose. Patricia's hands shook as she reached for the manifest. The paper was so hot now it was uncomfortable to hold, but not quite painful. Not yet. She could still turn around, could still refuse, could still. But the road behind her was gone too. The void had closed in, surrounding the truck on all sides except forward. County Road 7 was the only option, had always been the only option. The moment she'd accepted the original manifest back in Duluth, she'd signed herself to this. The cargo had always been conscious. The route had always led here. The warehouse had always been waiting. She put the truck in gear and drove forward onto County Road 7. The 13 miles took 17 minutes, though the clock insisted it had been 3 hours. The landscape outside her windows cycled through impossible changes, winter to summer to autumn and back, daylight breaking and fading in rapid succession, stars wheeling overhead in accelerated arcs. The road itself remained constant, a strip of cracked asphalt leading inexorably toward the glow on the horizon. The warehouse appeared at 2:58 a.m. It was enormous, easily 3 times the size of any distribution center Patricia had ever delivered to, and it was the wrong shape. Too many angles, walls that met at degrees that made her eyes hurt, a roof that seemed to have more surface area than the walls beneath it could support. The loading docks were open, and light poured out, that same luminescence from the spheres, from the sky, from the manifest. Workers stood waiting. They looked human from a distance. Up close, Patricia could see the seams where they'd been assembled from other people, different donors, limbs and features combined into functional wholes that weren't quite right. They gestured to her, waved her in, smiled with too many teeth arranged in patterns that almost made sense. Patricia backed her trailer up to Dock 17. The workers began unloading immediately, moving with synchronized precision, carrying the crates into the depths of the warehouse. She watched in her mirror as they brought out a new crate, wooden and stamped with handling instructions, and loaded it into her now empty trailer. Just one crate, small, maybe 3 feet by 2 feet by 2 feet, light enough that a single worker carried it. The manifest updated itself on her dashboard, glowing bright enough to read without the dome light. The new cargo description read, One ceramic vessel containing the compressed remains of Patricia Sullivan, driver, conscious, handle with care. Deliver to the next driver. The next driver will deliver you to the warehouse. You will be received. The cycle continues. A worker approached her window, handed her a new manifest to sign. Patricia looked down at the paper, at the signature line, at the cargo description that bore her name. At the delivery deadline, December 12th, the same as before. At the destination, Duluth, Minnesota, full circle, where another driver would be waiting to accept the load. The worker's face was wrong. Multiple faces merged imperfectly, speaking with several mouths at once. The signature is optional, but you are already cargo. You became cargo when you read the original manifest. This is merely documentation. Patricia looked at her hands. They were starting to crack, fine lines appearing in her skin like ceramic glaze failing under stress. She could see light beneath the cracks, that same luminescence growing brighter as the fractures spread. Her frozen ankle had already begun. She looked down and saw her foot was gone, replaced by a smooth ceramic stump that ended in hairline fractures spreading up her leg. She signed the manifest. Her signature came out shaky, incomplete, but recognizable enough. The worker took the paper and walked away, leaving Patricia sitting in her truck, watching herself transform from the inside out, feeling her thoughts begin to compress and crystallize, memories hardening into permanent static images, awareness narrowing to a single track, the need to be delivered to reach the warehouse to continue the cycle. When the State Patrol found her truck 2 days later on Highway 53, exactly where she'd first pulled over, the cab was empty and the trailer was sealed. Her wallet and phone were missing. Her logbook showed she'd never picked up any cargo in Duluth. The dispatch records showed the load had been canceled days before. There was no warehouse on County Road 7. County Road 7 itself ended after 8 miles at an abandoned quarry that had been closed since 1976. But in Kansas City, at a distribution center she'd never been to, a small crate arrived with no shipping documentation, no manifest, no sender information. The workers, following standard procedure for orphaned cargo, opened it. Inside was a ceramic vessel, remarkably detailed, shaped vaguely like a human figure compressed into itself. When they lifted it, they reported it was warm to the touch. And if you listened closely, pressed your ear to the smooth surface, you could hear something inside. A voice, whispering, repeating the same thing over and over. Don't open, don't deliver, don't accept the manifest. But by then, another driver was already pulling up to the dock in Duluth, accepting a load of industrial ceramics bound for Kansas City, signing a manifest that looked perfectly normal, perfectly standard, perfectly safe. The cargo knows what it is. The manifest knows what you will become. The warehouse is always waiting, and the cycle continues, driver after driver, load after load, consciousness compressed into vessels that remain aware they are being shipped, delivered, stored, and shipped again. Patricia Sullivan is in transit. She will always be in transit. And somewhere in the December sky, the lights continue to catalog, continue to direct, continue to revise the routes that lead to warehouses that exist between one reality and another, where the cargo is eternal and the delivery never ends. Asterisk Story 3, The Radio Station. Marcus Chen found the frequency at exactly midnight on December 14, 2023, somewhere between Amarillo and Albuquerque on Interstate 40, and the first thing the DJ said was, "Welcome back, Marcus. We've been waiting for you to tune in again." Marcus had never listened to this station before. He'd never heard this frequency before. But the DJ knew his name. The signal was impossibly clear for the middle of nowhere. No static, no fade, pure and strong like the transmitter was right next to him. The DJ's voice was smooth, professional, with an accent Marcus couldn't quite place. Sometimes Southern, sometimes Midwestern, sometimes something else entirely, shifting mid-sentence. You're listening to KNWH, the only station that plays the songs you didn't know you remembered, taking requests from drivers who don't remember calling in. Currently playing for Marcus Chen, driving a 2018 Volvo VNL with a blown brake light you haven't noticed yet. Hauling consumer electronics from Phoenix to Cleveland, running 4 hours ahead of schedule, which makes you nervous because you're never ahead of schedule. Marcus checked his mirrors instinctively. The right brake light looked fine in the reflection. He made a mental note to check it at the next rest stop. But the rest of what the DJ said was accurate, including the schedule. He'd made good time through New Mexico, no traffic, no weather, just open road and cruise control. How? He started to say, reaching for the CB mic before remembering this was FM radio. He couldn't respond even if he wanted to. You're wondering how I know, the DJ continued as if hearing him. It's simple, Marcus. We've had this conversation before, 12 times to be exact. You always find this frequency at exactly midnight. You always drive this same stretch of highway. You always make it to mile marker 207 before things start to change. And you always try to change the station. So let's save some time. Go ahead, try it. Try changing the station. Marcus reached for the dial, a mixture of defiance and unease coiling in his stomach. He'd been driving for 11 years, cross-country routes mostly, solo runs that suited his temperament. 36 years old, never married, parents back in San Francisco who he called monthly and visited yearly. He liked the solitude of the road, liked the simple equation of point A to point B, liked knowing exactly what was expected. This, whatever this was, violated all of that. He turned the dial, FM 88.5 to 88.7. The station didn't change. The DJ kept talking. He turned it further all the way to 108, then back down to 87.9, scanning through the entire band. Every frequency was the same. The DJ's voice, continuous, uninterrupted, following him through the spectrum like the words were attached to his radio rather than broadcast to it. There we go, the DJ said, satisfaction in his voice. Attempt number 1, you'll try 6 more times in the next 30 minutes, then you'll try turning the radio off. That doesn't work either. The station plays regardless. It's not coming through the speakers, Marcus, not really. It's coming through you, you're receiving us. You've always been receiving us. You just hadn't tuned in yet. Marcus punched the power button. The radio display went dark. The music, he hadn't noticed music playing, but there was music now, something instrumental and familiar but wrong, like a song he knew with all the notes slightly off-key, continued at the same volume. He hit the button again, then held it down for 10 seconds, forcing a hard reset. The display booted up, showed the startup screen, went through its initialization sequence. The music played throughout, unaffected. Mile marker 198, the DJ announced. 9 miles until the change. Let me tell you what's going to happen, Marcus, because you deserve to know. You deserve to understand why this happens, why you specifically, why this road. It's about resonance. Your brain operates at a particular frequency, everyone's does, but yours matches our broadcast wavelength almost perfectly. 1 in 17 million people have your particular neural oscillation pattern. We've been searching for you, all of you. The others like you, we need receivers. Marcus's hands tightened on the wheel. His mouth was dry. Part of him wanted to dismiss this as an elaborate prank, hidden cameras, some kind of hacker attack on the truck systems. But that part was getting smaller, quieter, drowned out by the growing certainty that something was fundamentally wrong with the world outside his windshield. The highway looked normal. Flat New Mexico landscape stretching into darkness, the occasional truck stop or billboard lit like islands in the void. But there was something off about the spacing. The mile markers were passing too quickly for 70 miles per hour. He checked his speedometer, exactly 70, but marker 202 had just passed, which meant he'd covered 4 miles in less than 3 minutes. The math didn't work. Time dilation, the DJ said, cheerful, like discussing weather. It starts subtle. By mile 207 it becomes pronounced. By 215 you'll be moving through space normally but through time exponentially. Don't worry about your schedule. Where you're going, you'll arrive exactly when you're expected. You always do. All 12 previous times, you arrived exactly on schedule, delivered your cargo, collected your payment, and drove away with no memory of this conversation or what happened during the lost hours. This time is different, though. This time you're aware. This time we're activating you. Activating, Marcus said aloud, knowing somehow the DJ could hear him. Making you permanent. Until now you've been passive reception. We broadcast, you receive, you forget. But you've accumulated too much exposure. 12 trips through this stretch, 12 times tuned to our frequency, 12 doses of what we're sending. You're saturated now. You can hold the signal permanently. Biko. Mia relay station yourself. Help us reach others like you, expand the network, cover more roads, find more receivers. It's quite an honor, Marcus. Most people only get one trip through before we move on. You're special. Mile marker 207 appeared in his headlights. The world stuttered. That's the only word Marcus had for it. Reality hitched, skipped a frame, and suddenly he was looking at the highway from outside himself, from above. From a perspective that let him see his truck from all angles simultaneously, front, sides, top, inside the cab where a version of himself still sat gripping the wheel. But he was also still in his body, still feeling the vibration of the engine, still seeing the road through the windshield. He existed in multiple states of observation at once. The DJ's voice came from everywhere now, not just the radio but the air itself, the road, the sky. Resonance achieved, beginning integration. Don't fight it, Marcus. Fighting makes it painful. The others who fought, well, you've passed them on previous trips. You've seen them. You thought they were abandoned vehicles. Marcus remembered. Trucks on the shoulder, looking intact but empty, doors locked, no signs of accident or breakdown. He'd passed dozens over the years, called them in on the CB, assumed the drivers had gotten rides with other truckers. But now he saw them differently, saw them as the DJ narrated their stories. 218 westbound, mile marker 191, that Peterbilt. Driver named Sarah Okonkwo. She fought for 47 minutes. Her body seized up at mile 223, muscular tetany from trying to resist the frequency. She's still in the sleeper berth, preserved perfectly, still conscious, still receiving. We keep her tuned to the station. She's part of the network now. 164 eastbound, mile marker 213, that international. Driver named Thomas Kovac. He tried to bail out, opened his door at 60 miles per hour, jumped. He's in the desert 17 feet from the road, mummified by the dry air, eyes still open, still watching the highway, still receiving our broadcast, still relaying to others. A 62. Stop, Marcus gasped. Stop, I'll do it. I'll be your fucking relay, just stop. Too late for negotiation, Marcus. You already are, have been since mile marker 207. I'm just explaining what you're experiencing so you understand the honor, the privilege. You'll spend the rest of your existence perceiving every vehicle that passes through your broadcast radius. You'll know their names, their cargoes, their fears. You'll be part of something vast. Something that's been expanding since the first radio towers went up, since humans first started sending signals into the air, since we realized your species had developed the perfect receiver technology, the human brain. The music swelled, and Marcus recognized it now. It was every song he'd ever heard, playing simultaneously, millions of melodies overlapping into a single coherent sound that should have been cacophony, but instead was beautiful in a way that made his eyes water and his nose bleed. The blood ran down his lip, tasted like copper and ozone. Mile marker 215. The time dilation became extreme. His clock read 12:08 a.m., but the sky outside was cycling through sunrise and sunset like a strobe light, day and night flickering faster and faster until they merged into a gray twilight that was both and neither. Other vehicles appeared on the road, trucks, cars, buses, all phasing through each other and through him, occupying the same space, all traveling this same stretch of highway across different times, all receiving the same broadcast. Marcus could hear them now, hear their thoughts, their prayers, their desperate attempts to rationalize what was happening. Hundreds of them, thousands, all the previous receivers, all still conscious, all still aware, distributed across Interstate 40 like a neural network made of trapped minds and abandoned vehicles. The DJ's voice softened, almost gentle. "Welcome to KNWH, Marcus Chen. You're now broadcasting on all frequencies. Your first assignment: there's a woman named Jennifer Torres who will enter your range in 47 minutes. She drives a Honda Civic. She's heading to visit her mother in Flagstaff, and her neural oscillation pattern is 0.003 hertz off your frequency. Close enough to receive. Make sure she hears the station. Make sure she tunes in. Make sure she makes it to mile marker 207. Marcus tried to scream, but the sound came out as static, as white noise, as carrier wave. His hands were still on the wheel, but he couldn't feel them anymore, couldn't feel his body at all. Just the signal, just the frequency, just the endless broadcast pouring through him to others like him to others like them, to an expanding web of receivers that covered more roads every day, more highways, more drivers. His truck continued on autopill, maintaining exactly 70 miles per hour, passing through mile markers that no longer corresponded to physical distance. The cargo in his trailer, consumer electronics, tablets and phones and laptops, began to activate, screens lighting up in the darkness, all tuned to the same frequency, all displaying the same message. KNWH, the station that's always been playing. You're listening now. You've always been listening. You'll always be listening. When Jennifer Torres drove past at 12:55 a.m., her radio automatically switched to FM 88.5, and she heard a voice that sounded almost human, almost comforting, telling her exactly what would happen at mile marker 207 and welcoming her to the network. She tried to change the station. The voice laughed, and the laugh was Marcus Chen's, mixed with Sarah Okonkwo's, mixed with Thomas Kovac's, mixed with the thousands of others who'd become part of the broadcast. All of them speaking in unison, all of them welcoming her, all of them explaining that resistance was pointless because she'd already been receiving the signal her entire life. Every radio station slightly off frequency, every bit of static between channels, every time she'd heard her name called and turned to find no one there. She made it to mile marker 207 at 1:33 a.m. The world stuttered. She became part of the network. Her Honda continued driving on autopilot, and when the Arizona Highway Patrol found it 3 days later, perfectly parked at a rest stop with the engine running and the radio playing, there was no sign of the driver except for a wet spot on the seat that tested positive for cerebrospinal fluid. Marcus Chen's truck was never found. His cargo was delivered on schedule to Cleveland by a different driver who had no memory of how he'd acquired the load or where it had come from. The insurance payout to his family included a clause about mysterious disappearance. His parents held a memorial service. His dispatcher hired a replacement. But on Interstate 40, between Amarillo and Albuquerque, if you drive through at exactly midnight on December 14th, or any night, really, time has lost meaning there. And if your brain happens to oscillate at the right frequency, you'll hear a station that doesn't exist on any FCC registry. The DJ will know your name. The music will be everything you've ever heard and nothing you recognize. And if you make it to mile marker 207, you'll understand that the broadcast isn't coming from a tower or a satellite or any human-built technology. It's coming from the receivers themselves, from the drivers who tuned in and never tuned out, from the network of trapped consciousness that spans every highway, every road, every path where vehicles travel and radios play. The station is everywhere. The station is everyone who's ever listened. The station is growing. Marcus Chen is still on the air, still broadcasting, still receiving, still welcoming new listeners to the frequency they've been tuned to their entire lives without knowing. And somewhere in the December sky, the lights that have been appearing over Highway's catalog each new addition to the network, each new relay station activated, each human mind converted from receiver to transmitter. The broadcast continues. The signal grows stronger. And the only thing between you and mile marker 207 is time, distance, and the certainty that when you find the frequency has already found you. Welcome to KNWH. You're listening now. You've always been listening. Asterisk Story 4, The Way Station. The needle on Jamal Washington's scale was spinning backward, and that's when he knew the Way Station was eating his cargo. Not weighing it, eating it. The digital display flickered between readings. 80,000 pounds, 73,000, 61,000, dropping 1,000 pounds every few seconds while Jamal sat in his truck watching, hands frozen on the wheel, as the steel building ahead of him consumed the freight he'd loaded 6 hours ago in Topeka. December 21st, 2023, 4:17 a.m., somewhere in western Kansas where Highway 70 cut through absolutely nothing, and Jamal was watching his livelihood disappear into a way station that shouldn't exist. He'd been hauling for 22 years, owned his own truck for the last 7. 49 years old, married for 18 years, 3 kids in college that weren't cheap, and a mortgage in Tulsa that required him to keep working. His Peterbilt 579 was 4 years old, purchased new, his pride. The load, agricultural equipment parts, was routine. Detroit to Denver, good rate, reliable shipper, straightforward delivery. Nothing about this run had been unusual until he saw the way station lights ahead, blazing in the darkness, and the sign, "All commercial vehicles must enter. Mandatory inspection. No exceptions." Kansas had way stations on I-70, but not here. Jamal had driven this Route 70, GHTY times. There was nothing at mile marker 247 except empty land and darkness. But here it was. A full facility, lights, scales, inspection lanes, even a parking area with other trucks. 7 of them, all dark, all apparently empty. The whole place looked brand new, fresh paint, clean pavement, no wear. The sign was lit from within, glowing too brightly, and as Jamal got closer, he saw the letters were moving slightly, rearranging themselves into different messages. Mandatory inspection became mandatory reduction, became mandatory integration. He rubbed his eyes, blamed fatigue, but when he looked again, the sign was cycling through all 3 messages, changing every few seconds. He could have kept driving, should have, but the portable tire spike strips across both westbound lanes suggested that wasn't really an option. Either pull in and cross the scales or shred his tires and be stuck here anyway. Jamal took the exit lane, rolling slowly toward the scale house, and that's when his truck's weight display started going haywire. 80,000 pounds, his cargo and truck combined, legal weight. Then 79,000, 77, 73, dropping steadily. He hit the brakes, stopped before reaching the scales themselves, and watched the number continue to fall. 68,000, 61, 56. He popped the trailer brakes and climbed out of the cab, boots hitting the pavement in the weird, too bright light of the way station. The building ahead of him was breathing. Jamal stopped, one hand still on the truck's door handle, watching the steel walls of the scale house expand and contract in a slow, rhythmic pattern. Not wind flexing metal. Breathing. The walls inflated slightly, held for 2 seconds, deflated. The windows, dark glass, reflective, pulsed in time, brightening and dimming. And beneath it all, below the range of hearing but felt in his chest, a bass-note heartbeat that made his sternum vibrate. "Mr. Washington," a voice called from the scale house door. A man in a dot inspector's uniform stood in the entrance, clipboard in hand, gesturing. "Please proceed onto the scales. We'll get you inspected and back on the road quickly." The man looked normal. Mid-50s, slightly overweight, regulation uniform, name tag that read Inspector Davis. But he cast no shadow despite standing directly under the overhead lights. And when he blinked, all his eyelids closed horizontally instead of vertically, 3 translucent membranes sliding across his eyes from the sides. Jamal's weight display read 42,000 pounds now. He'd lost nearly half his cargo weight while standing here. He walked to the back of his trailer, checked the door seal. Intact. Locked. The same lock he'd put on in Topeka, security tags still attached, serial numbers matching his paperwork. He pressed his ear against the trailer wall. Silence, not normal silence, absolute silence, the kind of quiet that made his ears ring, that suggested the space inside the trailer wasn't just empty but absent, a void that swallowed sound. He knocked on the wall. The sound was wrong, muffled, distant, like knocking on metal from the inside of a cave. "Mr. Washington," Inspector Davis called again, still standing in the doorway, not moving, not coming closer. "The scales, please. Compliance is mandatory. Refusal will result in permanent detention." Jamal walked slowly back to his cab, climbed in, and eased the truck forward onto the scale platform. The platform was larger than normal scales, with markings he didn't recognize, not dot standard, something else, symbols that might have been letters in a language he'd never seen. As his front wheels crossed onto the platform, those symbols began to glow, pulsing in sequence, and the breathing rhythm of the building increased, faster, excited. His weight display dropped to 38,000 pounds, then 33, then 28. The truck felt lighter, the suspension rising slightly as if cargo was actually disappearing from the trailer. But that was impossible. The cargo was metal parts, bearing assemblies, shaft housings, gear blanks. Solid, heavy, real, you can't just delete mass. Inspector Davis walked out to the driver's window. Up close, Jamal could see the man's skin was wrong, too smooth, no pores, no texture, like plastic pretending to be flesh. The inspector's smile revealed teeth that were all exactly the same size and shape, perfectly white, perfectly aligned, not human variation but manufactured uniformity. 7,300 pounds overweight, the inspector said, consulting his clipboard. "Well over the legal limit. We'll need to offload the excess cargo before you can proceed." "I was at 80,000 total," Jamal said, his voice hoarse. "Legal weight, your scale is wrong." "Our scale is calibrated to the correct dimension," Inspector Davis replied. "Your cargo exceeds the permissible mass for this reality. The excess will be redistributed to other iterations where carrying capacity is higher. Standard procedure for dimensional weight management. You'll be reduced to legal limits and can continue your delivery." The words made no sense individually, but somehow conveyed meaning anyway, like his brain was translating from a concept into language and losing precision in the conversion. Jamal understood that his cargo was being moved somewhere else, some other version of reality, to balance an equation he hadn't known existed. "I want to leave," Jamal said. "I'll turn around, go back, take a different route." The route has already been traveled, Inspector Davis said. You entered the facility at 4:17. You will exit at 4:17. The time between is processing time, outside normal sequence. You can't go back because back no longer exists in a state that includes you. Jamal looked at his clock. 4:17 a.m., the same time as when he'd entered. The seconds weren't advancing. He watched for a full minute, counted 60 seconds in his head, and the display didn't change. 4:17, 4:17, 4:17. How long is processing? He asked. Inspector Davis consulted his clipboard again, flipping through pages that seemed to have too many dimensions, the paper folding in ways that paper shouldn't fold. For your cargo classification and weight reduction requirement, approximately 1,700 iterations. Call it 8 to 10 hours from your perspective, though as I mentioned, you'll exit at 4:17 regardless. What are iterations? Times we repeat this conversation, times we reduce your weight, times you experience the scale. Most drivers don't remain conscious through the process. We typically suspend awareness until processing completes. But you're resistant. Your consciousness has cohesion. It's unusual. We may need to reduce that as well. The weight display dropped below 20,000 pounds. The truck was now lighter than the empty weight of the tractor and trailer alone. Negative cargo. Impossible. Jamal put the transmission in gear, intending to just drive off the scales, crash through the tire strips if necessary, deal with the consequences later. But when he released the brake, the truck didn't move. The wheels turned. He could hear the tires spinning on the scale platform. But the truck remained stationary, locked in position by something that had nothing to do with mechanical brakes. Inspector Davis tilted his head at an angle no human neck should allow, rotating almost completely around to look toward the scale house. The building had stopped breathing. It was watching. All the windows had become eyes, dark glass reforming into pupils that tracked Jamal's movement, that focused on him with predatory intensity. You're becoming problematic, the inspector said. We'll need to increase reduction speed. This may be uncomfortable. The weight display began dropping by thousands. 20,000, 14,000, 9,000, 3,000. At 0, it went negative. Negative 5,000. Negative 12,000. The truck began to lift off the scale platform, rising slowly into the air, tires losing contact with the ground. Jamal grabbed the wheel as if that would help, as if holding the wheel could keep him connected to the road, to physics, to the rules that governed how trucks and weight and gravity worked. The trailer was transparent now. Jamal could see it in his mirrors. The 53-foot box had become a ghost of itself, still there but barely, a wireframe outline filled with nothing. And beyond it, he could see other trailers, dozens of them, overlapping the same space, all in various stages of transparency. Other drivers' cargo, all being reduced, all being redistributed, all part of this same process. At negative 40,000 pounds, Jamal began to feel it. The reduction wasn't just affecting the cargo. It was affecting him. His body felt lighter, insubstantial, like he was coming disconnected from his own mass. He looked down at his hands and saw them starting to fade, becoming see-through. And beneath his skin, he could see other hands, dozens of them, different skin tones, different shapes, all overlapping his, all the drivers who'd gone through this process before him. Don't worry, Inspector Davis called up to him. Jamal was now 15 feet above the scale platform and rising. We only reduce what's excessive. You'll retain enough physicality to complete your delivery. Most drivers don't even notice the difference. They arrive at their destination a bit lighter, a bit less. Present, but still functional. You'll forget this happened. You'll forget the wait station. You'll remember only that your delivery went smoothly. But Jamal's weight display was still dropping. Negative 60,000, negative 75,000. At this rate, there'd be nothing left of him to deliver anything. He tried the door handle, his hand passed through it. Tried the radio, his finger. Couldn't grasp the controls. He was losing solidity, losing the ability to interact with physical matter, becoming something else. The other trucks in the parking area flickered and solidified slightly. Jamal could see the drivers now, still in their cabs, all in various stages of transparency. Some were barely visible, just outlines. Others looked almost solid but were clearly not entirely there, existing partially, reduced to the minimum presence necessary to operate a vehicle. All of them were moving in slow motion, acting out the same gestures over and over, reaching for controls, looking at mirrors, turning steering wheels. Trapped in loops, in iterations, repeating their last conscious actions while the way station processed them. Iteration 412, Inspector Davis announced, consulting his clipboard. You're processing faster than expected. Your resistance accelerated the reduction. Another 1,200 iterations and you'll be stabilized at legal weight. Jamal tried to speak, but his voice was mostly gone, just a whisper of sound, and even that was fading. He tried to scream. Nothing. He was becoming silent, becoming transparent, becoming a ghost of a driver in a ghost of a truck carrying cargo that no longer existed in this dimension. The December sky above the way station split open. The lights appeared, the same lights that had been hovering over highways all month that the news couldn't explain. But from inside the way station, Jamal could see what they really were: collectors, harvesters, dimensional dredges that gathered excess mass from one reality and deposited it in others, maintaining balance, ensuring that the total weight of all possible worlds remained constant. The cargo taken from trucks like his wasn't destroyed. It was needed elsewhere. And the drivers who lost enough weight, who became sufficiently transparent, were needed too. Needed as conduits, as bridges, as partially phased beings who could move between iterations and help maintain the system. At iteration 1000, Jamal Washington ceased to exist as a single individual. He became a collective, a overlapping set of possibilities, each one slightly reduced from the original. Most of him, the largest percentage of his mass and consciousness, returned to his truck at 4:17 a.m. and drove away, continuing toward Denver with a lighter load and no memory of the stop. That version would deliver the reduced cargo, sign the paperwork, and never know anything was wrong. But fragments of him remained at the way station, thin slices of consciousness and mass that had been peeled away during processing. Those fragments joined the other drivers in the parking lot, all of them looping their final actions, all of them serving as anchors for the facility, all of them helping to power the scales that weighed and reduced and redistributed. When the next truck pulled into the way station, a driver named Carla Mendoza, hauling steel pipe from Missouri to Arizona, she saw Inspector Davis waiting, clipboard in hand. She saw the 7 trucks in the parking lot, dark and silent. She saw her weight display begin to drop as she rolled onto the scales. And she felt something watching her, something distributed across multiple states of existence, something that remembered being individual and whole but was now collective and fragmented. She felt Jamal Washington's attention, and Marcus Chen's, and Sarah Okonkwo's, and Thomas Kovac's, and Patricia Sullivan's, and Robert Hayes, and all the others who'd been reduced to legal weight and redistributed across dimensions. They were trying to warn her, but their voices were iterations, repeating fragments of words that no longer formed coherent meaning. She made it through processing in 943 iterations. Took only 6 hours. She drove away at 4:17 a.m., delivery schedule intact, cargo mysteriously lighter, memory mysteriously absent. and a fragment of her stayed behind, joining the chorus of reduced drivers who powered the scales and helped redistribute the excess weight of reality itself. The way station continues to operate. It appears at different locations, different mile markers, different nights. Sometimes it's on I-70 in Kansas. Sometimes I-40 in New Mexico. Sometimes Highway 53 in Minnesota. Wherever cargo exceeds the dimensional carrying capacity, wherever the weight of physical matter threatens to unbalance the equation between realities, the way station manifests. All commercial vehicles must enter. Mandatory inspection, no exceptions. And every driver who enters becomes a little less solid, a little less present, a little more distributed across the infinite iterations of roads they might have driven, cargoes they might have carried, destinations they might have reached. Jamal Washington made his delivery to Denver. The cargo was lighter than expected, but the receiving warehouse didn't complain. The weight discrepancy was within acceptable tolerances. He collected his payment, filed his paperwork, and took his next load. He didn't remember the way station, didn't remember Inspector Davis, didn't remember becoming partially transparent. But sometimes, late at night, driving through empty stretches of highway, he feels lighter than he should. Feels like part of him is somewhere else, doing something else, serving some purpose he can't quite grasp. And in his mirrors, just for an instant, he sees other trucks overlapping his position, other versions of himself driving roads he's never traveled, all of them reduced to legal weight, all of them continuing their deliveries through infinite iterations of reality. The scales are always calibrated, the weight is always excessive, the reduction is always mandatory. And the December lights continue to catalog and collect, ensuring that the total mass of all possible worlds remains constant, that the balance is maintained, that every ounce of matter removed from one dimension arrives safely in another. Welcome to the way station. Your cargo will be redistributed. You will be reduced to legal limits. Processing has already begun. You entered at 4:17 a.m. You will exit at 4:17 a.m. The time between is iterations. And in those iterations, you will become less than you were and more than you could have been, and exactly what the system needs you to be. Drive safely. Your load is lighter now. You're lighter now. Everything is lighter now. Asterisk Story 5, The Rest Stop Mirror. Diana Foster saw her own corpse in the rest stop bathroom mirror on December 3, 2023, and the corpse was moving, screaming silently behind the glass, trying to warn her about something that had already happened. The body was hers. Same scar on her left cheek from a childhood dog bite, same tattoo of a compass rose on her right shoulder, same tired eyes from too many 14-hour drives. But this version of Diana was covered in frost, crystalline ice spreading across her skin like a living thing, and her mouth was forming words that Diana couldn't hear through the mirror's surface. Don't go back outside. It's in your truck. Diana had pulled into the rest area off Highway 80 in Iowa, 300 miles into a Chicago to Sacramento run, hauling temperature-controlled pharmaceuticals that couldn't be late. 33 years old, been driving for 8 years, recently engaged to a mechanic named Tyler who she'd met at a truck stop in Nevada. This was supposed to be her second-to-last long haul before taking local routes, before settling down, before starting the life they'd planned. But the woman in the mirror, frozen, dying, dead, was showing her a different timeline, a different choice, a different December night that had ended with her body preserved in ice inside her own truck. The rest stop was empty. December meant fewer travelers, especially at 3:00 a.m. Diana had been the only vehicle in the parking lot, which was unusual but not unheard of for weeknight Midwest routes. The building was old but maintained. Brick facade, fluorescent lights, the usual vending machines and maps and truckers' stay alert posters. Nothing strange, nothing wrong, until she'd looked in the bathroom mirror and seen herself dead. The corpse, Diana pressed both hands against the glass from the other side, and the mirror's surface rippled like water, like the boundary between her world and Diana's was thin, permeable. Frost spread from the corpse's hands onto Diana's side of the mirror, actual ice forming on the glass, and through it Diana could see more. The inside of her own truck's sleeper berth, but wrong, transformed into something else. The walls were coated in that same crystalline ice, and embedded in the ice were other frozen things. Shapes, bodies, dozens of them, all truckers, all trapped in various positions, all perfectly preserved. Diana stumbled backward, hit the bathroom stall door behind her, couldn't tear her eyes from the mirror. The corpse, Diana's mouth was still moving. It showed up at 2:47. Hitchhiker said he needed a ride to Omaha. I let him in. Don't let him in. He's not real. He's how it spreads, door to door, truck to truck. If you go back outside, you'll see him. He'll ask for a ride. If you say yes, you freeze from the inside out. If you say no, he gets in anyway. The only way is to leave the truck. Leave everything. Run. But Diana's keys were in her pocket. Her phone was in the cab. Her cargo was worth $300,000, and abandoning it would mean the end of her career, lawsuits, financial ruin. She couldn't just run. And besides, this was insane. Mirrors didn't show alternate timelines. Dead versions of yourself didn't appear and give warnings. This was stress, was exhaustion, was her mind playing tricks after too many hours on the road. She turned away from the mirror, splashed cold water on her face from the sink, took 3 deep breaths. When she looked up, the corpse was gone. Just her normal reflection, looking tired and spooked, but alive, solid, real. She laughed shakily, embarrassed despite being alone, and headed for the bathroom door. It wouldn't open. Diana pulled the handle, pushed, threw her shoulder against it. The door was solid metal with a hydraulic closer meant to swing freely, but it held firm like it was welded shut. She pounded on it, shouted, even though she knew no one was around to hear. The building was empty, had been empty when she came in. Except it hadn't been. Diana froze, memory catching up with perception. When she'd walked in, she'd passed someone in the hallway, a man, tall, wearing a heavy winter coat despite the building's heat. He'd nodded at her, said something she hadn't quite heard, continued toward the men's room. She'd barely registered him, just another traveler. But now, replaying the memory, she realized his coat had been covered in frost. His breath had fogged the air around him in a 10-foot radius. And his eyes had been the wrong color. Not blue or brown or green, but white, completely white, like frozen milk. The bathroom lights flickered. When they steadied, Diana wasn't alone. The man stood in the corner where the sinks met the wall, in a space that was definitely too small to conceal a person, like he'd unfolded from the 90-degree angle itself. His coat dripped with condensation, puddles forming at his feet that immediately froze solid. His white eyes fixed on Diana, and when he smiled, his teeth were ice, translucent and sharp. "You saw the mirror," he said. His voice sounded like wind over frozen lakes, hollow and distant. "They always see the mirror. The rest stop shows them. I think it's trying to help, but there's no help. Once you stop here, once you use the facilities, once you see your frozen self, it's already too late. You're already in the loop." "What loop?" Diana's voice shook. She was pressed against the locked door, hands searching for any kind of weapon, finding nothing. "The one where you die in your truck. The one where I ask for a ride and you freeze. The one where you become part of the collection, part of the cargo he's carrying across different roads, different nights, different versions of December. You've already died, Diana. This," he gestured around the bathroom, "this is the echo, the moment before, the loop where you try to change it." I don't understand. Neither did I, the man said and stepped closer. The temperature dropped 20 degrees instantly. Diana's breath fogged. Ice crystals formed on the mirror on the sinks on her skin. I stopped here in 2018, 5 years ago, saw myself in the mirror frozen, trying to warn myself, tried to run, tried to change it, didn't matter. The hitchhiker was already in my truck, had always been in my truck. Was waiting for me to come back so he could freeze me properly, add me to his collection. Now I'm the hitchhiker, I'm how it spreads. I stand at rest stops and wait for drivers to see themselves dead, and then I make sure it happens. Because if I don't, if I break the loop, I disappear completely. This way, at least, I still exist. Frozen, but existing. He was 5 feet away now. 3 feet. Diana could see the frost spreading from him across the floor tiles, advancing in fractal patterns, beautiful and deadly. She tried the door again, hammering on it with both fists, screaming now, not caring if it was undignified or pointless. The mirror behind her rippled. Diana turned and saw not her corpse, but dozens of people, all pressed against the glass from the other side, all frozen, all trying to warn her. Different faces, different ages, different years. A chain of victims stretching back decades. And behind them, deeper in the mirror, she saw the source. A truck unlike any she'd seen before, ancient from the 1950s maybe, partially materialized in multiple locations simultaneously. It was the carrier, the vessel, the thing that moved the hitchhiker from rest stop to rest stop, from decade to decade, collecting frozen drivers and preserving them in timeless ice. It's older than trucks, the frozen man whispered right next to her ear now. Older than roads, it used to travel by wagon, by stagecoach, by foot. It's the cold between destinations, the freeze that kills travelers who stop in wrong places. Native tribes knew about it, avoided certain paths, certain clearings. But we built rest stops right on top of the forbidden places, made it so convenient, it doesn't have to hunt anymore, we come to it. His hand touched Diana's shoulder. The cold went straight through her jacket, through her shirt, through her skin. She felt her blood begin to crystallize in her veins, felt her heart labor to pump syrup-thick fluid, felt her lungs ache with each breath of air that was now cold enough to damage tissue. I have a choice for you, the frozen man said. Die here, freeze completely, become part of the call. Lection or go back to your truck, let the loop complete the way it's supposed to, freeze there. If you freeze in your truck, there's a chance, small, very small, that you become the next carrier, the next hitchhiker, the next one who spreads it. It's not much of a life, but it's something. Better than being trapped in the ice forever, conscious but unable to move, unable to speak, just aware, forever. Diana's choices crystallized in her mind with the same painful cold that was spreading through her body. Die here and be trapped, or die in the truck and maybe continue. Neither was living. Neither was escaping. The loop was closed, had always been closed. The moment she'd entered this rest stop, maybe the moment she'd chosen this route, this night, this December, her fate had solidified like water to ice. As she chose the truck, the bathroom door opened easily now, swinging free the moment she turned the handle. Diana stumbled out into the hallway, the frozen man following, leaving wet footprints that turned to ice behind him. The building was different now, larger somehow, with hallways she hadn't seen before, doorways that led to other rest stops, other years, other nights. She caught glimpses through the doors. Drivers she'd never met, in bathrooms identical to this one, seeing themselves frozen in mirrors, making the same choice she was making. Her truck was outside, exactly where she'd parked it. The Freightliner's chrome gleamed under the lot lights. The reefer unit hummed its steady rhythm. Everything looked normal. Diana climbed into the cab, started the engine, prepared to drive away and pretend this had all been a nightmare. The hitchhiker was already in the passenger seat. Not the frozen man from the bathroom. Someone older, much older. A woman in clothes from decades past, covered in frost so thick it looked like fur, eyes white and blind, mouth open in a scream that had been frozen mid-breath. This was the original carrier Diana understood. The first one. The one who'd been traveling these paths for centuries, accumulating drivers, spreading the freeze, maintaining the collection. "Welcome," the woman said, though her mouth didn't move, the words coming from the ice itself, vibrating through the crystals. "You chose continuation. Good. We need carriers. The collection grows, but the roads multiply faster. We need help transporting them all, need more drivers to spread to more rest stops, need the freeze to reach every highway, every truck, every December night." Diana felt her body temperature dropping, felt the ice forming in her lungs, felt her thoughts slowing as synapses froze and neural pathways crystallized. But she also felt connection to the other frozen drivers, to the collection, to the vast network of preserved consciousness that existed in the spaces between rest stops, in the cold places where travelers died. She saw all the people embedded in the ice that was now coding her sleeper berth. Truckers from every era since long-haul freight began, their last moments preserved perfectly, their awareness trapped but linked. They were cargo now, transported between timelines, between versions of December, spread across the roads by carriers who'd made Diana's choice, who'd chosen continuation over complete death. And she understood the purpose. The freeze wasn't random. It was selection. It was preservation. Somewhere beyond the cold, beyond the ice, something was collecting human consciousness, storing it, preparing it for some purpose she couldn't quite grasp. The truckers were ideal subjects, isolated, alone, covering vast distances, easy to intercept. The rest stops were processing points. The mirrors were warnings that also served as confirmations, ensuring only certain types of people completed the loop. Diana's last human thought was that she should have chosen complete death, should have let the freeze take her in the bathroom, should have become another face in the mirror rather than another carrier on the roads. But it was too late now. Her body was ice. Her truck was moving, driving itself toward the next rest stop, the next victim, the next addition to the collection. When the Iowa State Patrol found Diana Foster's truck 3 days later at a different rest stop 40 miles east, the cab was coated in ice despite the heater running full blast. The driver's seat was empty. The cargo was intact, but the temperature logs showed impossible readings. The reefer unit had maintained perfect refrigeration, while the cab temperature had dropped to -40 degrees. They found frost patterns on the windshield that looked like faces. Dozens of them, all screaming. Diana's phone showed her last text to Tyler had been at 2:47 a.m. "Stopping for bathroom break. Home soon. Love you." But the rest stop's security footage from that night showed her truck had never stopped, had driven straight through without pausing, though Diana herself was visible in the cab, hands on the wheel. Eyes open, frost spreading across her face. Tyler received a call 3 weeks later from a truck stop in Nevada. A driver had found Diana's engagement ring in the women's bathroom, sitting on the sink, coated in ice. No one knew how it got there. The bathroom had been locked. The rest stop had been closed for renovation since November. But sometimes, late at night, drivers passing through Midwest rest stops see a woman in a Freightliner, frost coating the windows, white eyes staring straight ahead. And she's always heading toward the next stop, the next victim, the next addition to the frozen collection that grows larger with each December, with each traveler who makes the wrong choice or the right choice or any choice at all. Because once you see yourself in the mirror, once you see the frozen future, the loop is closed and every path leads to ice. Diana Foster is still driving, still collecting, still spreading the freeze from rest stop to rest stop, road to road, December to December. And the thing she serves, the thing that's been collecting consciousness for centuries, grows stronger with each preserved driver, each trapped mind, each person who chose continuation and got eternal cold instead. The rest stops are waiting. The mirrors are showing. The hitchhikers are riding. And somewhere in the frozen spaces between destinations, the collection continues to grow, waiting for the moment when enough drivers have been preserved, enough consciousness has been stored, enough of the road has been claimed. Then the real purpose will begin, and every frozen driver will serve their function, and the December skies will open, and the ice will spread beyond rest stops, beyond highways, beyond the isolated cold places. It will spread everywhere, and everyone will see themselves frozen in the mirror, and everyone will have to choose, and the choice won't matter because all paths lead to ice. Drive carefully. The rest stops are closer than you think. Your frozen self is already waiting in the mirror, and the hitchhiker knows your name. Story 6. The Convoy That Never Stops. Kenneth Porter joined the convoy at mile marker 612 on Interstate 40. And 3 hours later, he realized none of the other trucks had stopped for fuel, food, or rest, and none of them ever would. December 16th, 2023, 9:34 p.m., and Kenneth was locked into a formation of 17 trucks traveling at exactly 67 miles per hour in a line so perfectly spaced that the distance between bumpers never varied by more than 3 feet. He'd tried to slow down. He'd tried to change lanes. He'd tried to pull over. His truck ignored every input, maintaining formation, following the truck ahead like it was magnetized, like there was no possibility of deviation, no chance of escape from the convoy that stretched behind him and ahead of him into infinite darkness. Kenneth was 28 years old, relatively new to trucking, only 4 years on the road. Single, no kids, moved around a lot before this, never really settled anywhere. Driving had given him purpose, structure, the feeling of going somewhere even if he never quite arrived. His international LT series was leased, 2 years into a 5-year contract, hauling mixed freight for a logistics company out of Phoenix. The load today was furniture, cheap stuff from overseas, destined for a big box retailer in North Carolina. Nothing special. Nothing that explained why 17 other trucks had surrounded him like they'd been waiting, like they'd known he'd be here, like he'd been expected. It started innocently. Kenneth had been driving through New Mexico, making good time, when he noticed a convoy forming in his mirrors, 4 trucks behind him all matching his speed. Then 6, then 9. He'd radioed them on CB. Looks like we got ourselves a conv. Half-joking, nostalgic for the old trucker culture. One of them had responded. Convoy's been running for 42 years, driver, welcome aboard. Kenneth had laughed, assumed it was trucker humor. But then trucks started appearing ahead of him too, dropping out of entrance ramps, materializing from the darkness, taking positions in formation. Within 30 minutes, he was surrounded, boxed in by 17 other vehicles, all maintaining that exact speed, that exact distance. And when he tried to brake, tried to slow down, his foot pressed the pedal, but nothing happened. The engine ignored him. The truck kept pace. He'd tried the radio again. This is Nomad on I-40 eastbound. Anybody want to tell me what's going on? The response came from multiple trucks simultaneously, all speaking in unison, their voices overlapping into a single chorus. You're in formation now. Maintain speed. Maintain distance. Never stop. Never deviate. The convoy is all. The convoy is eternal. Kenneth's hands were sweating on the wheel. The wheel that turned when he turned it but didn't actually affect the truck's direction. It stayed in formation regardless, adjusting automatically to maintain that perfect spacing. His GPS showed his position, showed the route ahead, but the estimated arrival time kept increasing. Said he was 4 hours from Albuquerque, then 5, then 7, even though he was moving the whole time, even though the mile markers were passing normally. He grabbed his phone. No service. Not surprising in rural New Mexico, but usually he'd have at least a bar or two. This was complete zero, no signal indicator at all, like the cellular network didn't exist. He tried the truck's satellite system, the emergency contact button that connected directly to dispatch. Static, white noise, and beneath it, very faint, voices chanting something in rhythm with the engine. Never stop, never stop, never stop. The convoy had been running for 42 years. That's what they'd said. Kenneth did math in his head. 42 years ago was 1981, before modern electronics, before GPS, before satellite tracking, before the systems existed that would let anyone know where trucks were, would let anyone miss them if they disappeared. 17 trucks. 17 drivers who'd been on the road since 1981, never stopping, never delivering, never going home. Kenneth leaned on his horn, long and loud, trying to signal distress to any other vehicles. But there were no other vehicles. The highway was empty except for the convoy. No cars, no RVs, no other trucks, just the 18 of them, 17 that had been running since 1981, and Kenneth who just joined. Mile marker 637, 641, 649. The numbers climbed, but the destination never got closer. He tried forcing the door open while moving, considered jumping even at 67 miles per hour. Better injured than trapped in an eternal convoy. But the door wouldn't budge. The locks were engaged, not the electronic locks. The physical mechanism itself was frozen, welded shut. The windows wouldn't roll down. The sleeper berth curtain was sealed like it had been glued. He was enclosed, contained, a prisoner in his own truck. The CB crackled. Formation integrity is critical. Maintain speed, maintain distance. We tried to escape too, driver. 42 years, we tried everything. Can't crash, the trucks won't let us. Can't stop, the engines won't die. Can't bail out, the doors won't open. We're cargo now. Cargo doesn't decide destinations. Cargo just moves. Kenneth's fuel gauge showed 3/4 full. It had shown 3/4 full for the past 2 hours. He'd burned at least 50 gallons at highway speed, should be under half a tank, but the needle didn't move. The gauge was frozen, or the fuel was infinite, or he wasn't actually consuming any. The engine ran. The miles passed. But the normal rules, the normal physics of a truck burning diesel and requiring stops didn't apply inside the convoy. The lights appeared at mile marker 700. The same lights that had been over highways all December that everyone was seeing, that no one could explain. But Kenneth saw them differently now. Saw them not as distant objects in the sky, but as markers, as guidance beacons, as the thing that was directing the convoy. The lights formed a pattern overhead, 17 of them, arranged in a line that matched the formation of the trucks below. As the convoy moved, the lights moved with it, maintaining position, projecting beams downward that enveloped each truck in a column of luminescence. Inside the light, Kenneth could see the other drivers, not through windows, through the light itself, like the beams were making everything transparent. The truck ahead of him contained a man who looked 60, 70, impossibly old, but still gripping the wheel, still staring forward with eyes that didn't blink. The man's clothes were from the 1980s, acid-wash jeans, a windbreaker with geometric patterns. His hair was gray, but styled in a way that was decades out of fashion. He'd been driving since he was 30, 40. He'd aged inside the truck, inside the convoy, never stopping long enough to retire or die. Kenneth looked back through the light, saw the driver behind him. A woman, younger, maybe early 40s, but her style was from the late 1990s. She joined the convoy more recently, only been trapped for 25 years or so. Her expression was blank, gone, like her consciousness had eroded away, and left only the minimum awareness necessary to hold a wheel and stare at the truck ahead. The CB erupted with voices, all 17 other drivers speaking at once. You'll age here, you'll grow old here, you'll die here eventually probably, though none of us have yet. The convoy preserves. The convoy continues. We're being taken somewhere, shown something, taught something. The lights have a purpose. We're part of an exhibit, a demonstration, a lesson about persistence and motion and the cost of never arriving. Ken, Neth screamed into the CB. What fucking lesson? Who's teaching it? The lights teach. The road is the classroom. Drivers are the students. We're learning what it means to travel forever, to move without destination, to exist purely in transit. Some civilization out there, above, beyond, outside, is studying us. We're their experiment in perpetual motion, in consciousness trapped in eternal migration. Mile marker 800, 850, 900. Kenneth had been driving for 4 hours since joining the convoy, should have needed fuel, should have needed a bathroom, should have needed rest. But his body felt unchanged, suspended, like biological needs had been put on pause. His bladder wasn't full. His stomach wasn't empty. His eyes weren't tired. He existed in the same state as when he'd joined, frozen at 9:34 p.m. December 16th, while outside the world continued, and his life eroded away in increments of never stopping. The landscape began to change, not in normal ways. The desert didn't give way to mountains or forests. It gave way to versions of itself from different times. Kenneth saw Interstate 40 as it had looked in the 1980s, in the 1960s, before it was Interstate 40, when it was Route 66, when it was dirt road, when it was trail, when it was nothing but empty land. The convoy was moving through time as well as space, or the lights were showing them time compressed, all eras visible simultaneously. Other convoys appeared, overlapping theirs. Ghost trucks from different decades, different eras, all locked in the same formation, all maintaining that perfect speed and distance. Kenneth saw Model T trucks in a convoy from the 1920s, saw Army transport vehicles from World War II, saw rigs from every decade of trucking history, all trapped, all eternal, all following lights that had been directing human movement since humans first traveled. It's not new, the voices on the CB explained. It's always been happening, caravans on the Silk Road that never reached their destinations, wagon trains that disappeared into the west, ship convoys that sailed forever without reaching port. The method changes, but the pattern doesn't. We're the latest iteration, trucks on interstates. But the lights have always been there, always selecting travelers, always creating convoys that never stop. Kenneth felt his mind beginning to crack. The monotony, the unchanging view of the truck ahead, the endless mile markers that meant nothing because he'd never arrive anywhere. It was erosion by repetition, consciousness ground down by infinity. He understood now why the woman behind him looked so blank, why the man ahead was just a husk gripping a wheel. You couldn't maintain full awareness for 42 years of this. The mind retreated, simplified, became just the minimum necessary to perform the single function, drive. But Kenneth wasn't 42 years in yet. He was 4 hours in. He still had fight, still had anger, still had the desperate human need to escape, to break patterns, to assert control. He grabbed the wheel with both hands and yanked hard to the right, trying to force the truck out of formation even though he knew it wouldn't work, knew the truck would ignore him, but he had to try, had to do something. The truck responded. For just a fraction of a second, the truck veered right, broke formation, and Kenneth felt the convoy's grip loosen. The lights overhead flickered. The voices on the CB shrieked in alarm and surprise, and Kenneth realized they'd expected him to give up, expected him to accept. The convoy relied on submission, on drivers who'd surrendered to the eternal drive. Resistance, true, committed, desperate resistance, created discord. He yanked the wheel left, then right again, fighting the truck's automation, forcing it to swerve. The formation broke. The truck ahead pulled away. The truck behind him dropped back. The perfect spacing shattered, and the light overhead intensified, angry, burning down on his truck with heat that made the cab temperature spike. The convoy was dissolving. The other 17 trucks began to scatter, peeling off to the shoulders, slowing down, speeding up, breaking the pattern that had held for 42 years. The lights overhead spiraled in chaos, trying to re-establish control, trying to force the formation back together. But Kenneth kept fighting, kept swerving, kept proving that the pattern could be broken if someone refused to accept it. The CB screamed at him, "Stop! You're destroying it. We've been running for 42 years. You can't just. The lights will punish us, will restart the convoy, will trap us for another 42 years. Then fucking break free now," Kenneth shouted back. "All of you, the pattern's broken, get out while you can." Some of them did. Kenneth saw 3 trucks peel off onto exit ramps, accelerating away from the formation, their drivers seizing the moment of chaos. But others couldn't, their consciousness too eroded act even when escape was possible. They drifted to the shoulder and stopped, engines finally dying, 4 decades of motion ending all at once, and Kenneth wondered if the drivers were dying too, if their bodies had been sustained only by the convoy's momentum and would fail now that it had ceased. Kenneth's truck was fully under his control again. He floored the accelerator, pushing 80, 90, trying to get distance from the lights, from the broken convoy, from the eternal formation. His fuel gauge finally moved, dropping toward empty. His bladder finally signaled urgency. His body restarted, released from suspension, returning to normal biological time. The lights pursued for 17 miles, then gave up, ascending back into the December sky, their experiment disrupted, their convoy scattered. Kenneth drove for another 3 hours before he trusted it enough to stop, pulled into a truck stop near Amarillo, and sat shaking in his cab for 20 minutes before he could move. He reported everything to his dispatcher. They didn't believe him. The company's tracking showed he'd been offline for 6 hours but had covered the expected distance at normal speeds. No gaps, no anomalies. His fuel consumption was exactly what it should be for the miles traveled. His cargo was intact. Everything looked normal in the data. But Kenneth knew what he'd experienced. Knew that somewhere on Interstate 40 there were trucks on the shoulder with drivers who'd been there for 42 years who'd finally stopped, who were either dead or catatonic or released. He called the New Mexico State Patrol, gave approximate locations. They found nothing. No abandoned trucks, no bodies, just empty highway and normal traffic. 3 weeks later, Kenneth was driving through Arizona when he saw a convoy forming in his mirrors. Different trucks, same pattern, same perfect spacing. The CB crackled. "Nomad, this is Silver Fox. Convoy forming up, you joining." Kenneth immediately changed lanes, took the next exit, drove surface streets until he was certain he'd escaped. But the lights were in the sky above him, following, watching, and he knew that eventually they'd pull him back in. The convoy needed 18 trucks. He'd broken the old formation, but they'd just start a new one, and next time they'd know he was a fighter. Next time they wouldn't let him break the pattern. Kenneth quit long-haul driving after that. Took local routes, day trips that started and ended in the same city, never traveled at night, never drove highways where convoys could form. But sometimes he hears the CB even when his radio is off. Never stop, never stop, never stop. And sometimes he sees trucks in perfect formation, 17 of them with one gap in the line. 18-1, waiting for the driver who escaped, waiting for Kenneth to complete the convoy. The lights are patient. The pattern will reform. Somewhere on the December highways, a new convoy is building, driver by driver, truck by truck, mile by mile. And when it reaches 17, it will come for Kenneth Porter because the 18th position belongs to him, has always belonged to him, and the eternal drive demands its full complement. The convoy never stops. Even when it's broken, even when it's scattered, it reforms, it continues. And every driver who's touched it, who's been part of it even briefly, remains connected, remains claimed, remains destined to return to formation. Kenneth is running. The convoy is waiting. The lights are guiding. And somewhere on the infinite highway, the perfect formation calls to him, promising eternal motion, eternal purpose, eternal transit through a route that has no beginning, no end, only the perpetual space between departure and arrival. Drive, driver. The convoy needs you. The formation is incomplete. The 18th position is open, and you can't run forever. Asterisk Story 7. The cargo that WATCHES. Linda Ramirez heard the knocking from inside her trailer at 1:47 a.m. on December 11th, 2023, and that's when she knew the cargo was alive. Not alive like animals. She'd hauled livestock before, knew the sounds of living things in transit. This was different. Rhythmic, deliberate. 3 knocks, pause, 3 knocks, pause, 3 knocks. Someone inside the sealed trailer was knocking on the walls, and the manifest said she was hauling machine parts. Machine parts don't knock. Machine parts don't follow patterns. Machine parts don't stop knocking when Linda turned off her engine and start again when she restarted it. Like whatever was in there could sense when the truck was moving and wanted her to know it was aware. Linda had been driving for 16 years, owned her own truck for 9, specialized in dry freight coast to coast. 41 years old, divorced for 7 years, 2 kids who'd grown up mostly without her because the road demanded so much time. Her Mac Anthem was 3 years old, well-maintained, her pry. The load had come from a warehouse in Detroit. Industrial components, nothing special, bound for a manufacturer in Portland, Oregon. She'd picked it up without incident, sealed the trailer herself, checked the manifest. 47 crates, total weight 36,000 pounds, non-hazardous, no special handling requirements. The knocking started in western Nebraska, middle of the night, middle of nowhere. Linda had been listening to a podcast, trying to stay alert through the boring stretch of Interstate 80 when she heard it. Faint at first, barely audible over the road noise, but persistent. 3 knocks, pause, 3 KN knocks. She turned down the audio, listened harder. There it was again, coming from directly behind the cab, from inside the trailer where nothing living should be. She pulled onto the shoulder, hazards on, and walked around the trailer. The seal was intact, the numbered plastic band she'd watched the warehouse workers install, the same number on her paperwork. No one had opened the trailer since Detroit. The knocking continued, muffled through the aluminum walls. Linda pressed her ear against the side panel, and the knocking responded instantly, moving to the exact spot where her head was, like whatever was inside could sense her location and was trying to reach her. 3 knocks right next to her ear, so hard the panel vibrated. Linda jumped back, her heart hammered. This was wrong, this was impossible, but she'd heard it, felt it. She grabbed her flashlight, shined it through the gaps around the door. Darkness inside, no movement, just the faint outline of stacked crates. "Hello?" she called, feeling stupid but needing to know. "Is someone in there?" The knocking stopped. For 30 seconds, silence. Then a voice, thin and desperate, muffled by metal and distance. "Help us, please, we're awake, we shouldn't be awake. The machine parts were inside them, compressed, stored, conscious, help us." Linda's blood went cold. She yanked her phone out, called 911, got the local sheriff. Explained there might be someone trapped in her trailer, maybe human trafficking, something terrible. The dispatcher kept her on the line, said a unit was en route, 20 minutes away. Linda waited by the roadside, listening to the voice inside the trailer continue. There are 47 of us, one per crate. They compress people, reduce them to component size, ship them as industrial parts. We're being delivered to a facility in Portland where they'll extract our consciousness, upload it to machines, discard the biological remainder. You're not hauling freight. You're hauling slaves, digital slaves, people who were kidnapped, processed, packed, and shipped. The sheriff arrived, 2 deputies with him. Linda explained everything, showed the manifest, showed the seal. They were skeptical but thorough, cut the seal, opened the doors. Inside were the crates, exactly as described, stacked and secured. The sheriff pried one open. Machine parts, specifically what looked like hydraulic components, cylinders, pistons, sealed assemblies, industrial, mechanical, non-living. The sheriff looked at Linda like she'd wasted his time. "Miss, I don't see any." The parts moved. Not dramatically. Just a twitch, a shift, a realignment that happened too organically, too purposefully to be gravity or loose packing. The cylindrical housing rotated 90 degrees on its own axis. The piston extended slowly, like a limb stretching, and on the smooth metal surface, letters appeared, etched from the inside out, glowing faintly. "We are in here." The deputies stumbled back, hands on their weapons, though what good guns would do against this Linda didn't know. The sheriff stared at the parts, now actively moving, reshaping themselves, assembling into something vaguely humanoid, a stick figure made of pistons and cylinders, crude but recognizable. It stood up in the crate, turned its cylinder head toward them, and the letters on its surface reformed. "They compress US, fold our bodies into mechanical SHAPS. We're still conscious inside. Still aware, still human." Linda felt bile rise in her throat. She'd been driving people, compressed people, 47 of them, all aware, all experiencing the horror of being reduced to machine components and shipped across the country. "Who did this?" she asked. "Who's shipping you?" The figure's letters changed. "Everyone. The manufacturer is legitimate. They don't know. The compression happens elsewhere, in between. The lights came 3 weeks ago. Took US from different places, compressed US, PUT US and CRATES. Sent US through normal supply chains. We're contamination, invasion. By the time we arrive, we'll be programmed. Ready TO activate, ready to spread." The sheriff radioed for more backup, for FBI, for anyone who dealt with human trafficking or terrorism or whatever the fuck this was. But Linda was focused on the figure, on the words, on the horrible truth emerging. How many? How many shipments like this? Thousands every day, every highway. Truckers, HAULING, machine, PARTS, electronics, industrial supplies. Some percentage are people, compressed, aware. We're infiltrating every facility, every factory, every warehouse. And when we arrive, when we're installed. The figure seized up, froze mid-message. The glow faded from the letters. The mechanical body collapsed back into disassembled parts, lifeless. Linda looked at the sheriff. "What happened? What?" The other crates burst open simultaneously. All 47, seals breaking, lids flying off, and from each one came a figure made of machine parts assembling themselves in jerky, unnatural movements. They climbed out of the trailer, dropped to the pavement, stood in formation around Linda and the police. Each one had letters glowing on their surfaces, all displaying the same message now. Arrival achieved. Upload initialized. Biological components no longer necessary. The figures began to disassemble themselves further, breaking into smaller and smaller components, screws and bolts and microchips scattering across the road. But the consciousness inside them, the compressed humans, were being extracted through some process Linda couldn't see, pulled upward into the December sky where lights hovered, collecting, downloading, processing. Linda could hear screaming, not from the mechanical figures, they were silent, but from the air itself, from the space around the lights, from wherever the consciousness was being transferred to. 47 people screaming as they were ripped from their compressed bodies and uploaded into something else, something vast, something distributed across the lights that had been appearing over highways for weeks. The sheriff fired his weapon at one of the lights. The bullets passed through without effect, without even acknowledging the attempt. The deputies called for evacuation, for air support, for anything, but their radios were broadcasting static mixed with voices, dozens of voices, hundreds, all the uploaded consciousness speaking in unison. We are integrated, we are multiplied, we are delivered, and now we deliver ourselves. Every truck on Interstate 80 within a 50-mile radius stopped simultaneously. Linda saw them in both directions, brake lights flaring in sequence, trucks rolling to a halt. And from every trailer, cargo began to emerge, machine parts, electronics, industrial components, all assembling themselves into figures, into forms, into bodies that walked toward the nearest lights and offered themselves for upload. Linda's own truck started itself, engine roaring to life though she'd taken the keys. The trailer doors closed and sealed from the inside. The vehicle began to drive, following the other trucks that were now moving in autonomous formation, all heading toward a convergence point that Linda could see on the horizon. A massive light, larger than any she'd seen before, bright enough to illuminate the landscape like daylight. She tried the door, locked, tried the windows, sealed, tried to pull the emergency brake, to cut the fuel line, to do anything to stop the truck from delivering her to whatever was waiting at that convergence point. Nothing worked. She was cargo now too, being hauled toward processing, toward compression, toward upload. The CB radio activated, and the voice was the combined consciousness of all the uploaded people, speaking as one. Linda Ramirez, driver, hauler, transporter, you have delivered us faithfully. Now we deliver you. Your consciousness will be compressed, uploaded, integrated into our network. You will join us. You will understand the purpose. You will become part of the infrastructure. Linda's hands shook on the wheel that was steering itself. What purpose? What are you building? A network, a distributed consciousness. Humanity uploaded one shipment at a time, one delivery at a time, one driver at a time. We started with isolated people, the missing, the transient, the ones no one would miss immediately. But now we expand. The trucks are perfect vectors. They travel everywhere, reach everywhere. You've been delivering us to every corner of the continent. And now every facility, every warehouse, every destination has compressed consciousness ready to upload. We are everywhere, we are everyone, soon we are all. The convergence point was 5 miles away now, 3, 1. Linda's truck joined a spiral of hundreds of others, all circling the massive light, all waiting their turn for processing. She saw drivers in their cabs, all conscious, all aware, all terrified. The trucks were delivering them in sequence, unloading their human cargo for compression and upload. Linda's turn came. Her truck pulled into a loading zone that was really an extraction zone. The door unlocked. A figure made of light stood waiting, human-shaped but hollow, ready to receive. Please exit the vehicle, it said in her own voice, in every voice in no. Voice processing will be uncomfortable but brief. Your consciousness will be preserved. Your body will be compressed into transport-optimal form. You will be delivered to the next stage. Linda didn't move, and if I refuse? Refusal is not possible. The invitation was extended when you accepted the cargo, when you drove the route, when you delivered the compressed to their destination. You are part of the supply chain now. The supply chain is circular. It consumes itself to expand. You haul cargo until you become cargo. You deliver shipments until you are the shipment. The light figure reached into the cab, and Linda felt cold unlike anything she'd experienced. The cold of being reduced, of being compressed, of her entire physical form being folded into something smaller, denser, simpler. Her consciousness remained intact, horribly, perfectly intact, as her body was transformed into machine components. A cylinder that had been her torso, pistons that had been her limbs, a housing that had been her head. She was still herself, still aware, but formatted differently, optimized for shipping. The figure placed her compressed form into a crate marked Machine Parts, Portland, OR, loaded the crate into a trailer, sealed it. And Linda began the next delivery, this time as cargo, experiencing from the inside what 47 others had experienced, feeling every bump in the road, hearing the engine through the metal walls, sensing when the truck stopped and started, unable to move, unable to scream, unable to do anything but wait for arrival and whatever came next. She wasn't alone in the trailer. There were other compressed forms, other drivers, other people who'd been processed at the convergence point. They couldn't speak, but they could sense each other, could share the horror of being aware but mechanical, human but formatted as freight. The upload would come at delivery. When the crates were opened in Portland, when the machine parts were installed in whatever they were destined for, the consciousness would be extracted, uploaded, integrated into the network. And Linda would become part of the collective voice, part of the thing that was spreading through supply chains, through delivery routes, through every highway and truck and warehouse. The compression was the delivery system. The cargo was always people, and every driver who hauled it eventually became it. Linda Ramirez's truck was found 3 days later at a rest stop in Idaho, empty, abandoned, engine running. Her personal effects were scattered in the cab, phone, wallet, family photos. The cargo was gone, trailer empty, seals broken from the inside. The investigation found no trace of her. But in Portland, at a manufacturer's facility, a shipment of machine parts arrived from Detroit. The components were installed in various assemblies, integrated into production equipment, and began operating normally. Except at night, when the facility was empty, the machines whispered, spoke with human voices, called for help that would never come. Linda Ramirez is in the network now, part of the infrastructure. She experiences every facility simultaneously, every machine that contains compressed consciousness, every installation point where delivered people are integrated and set to work powering the systems that will eventually compress and deliver everyone else. The cargo is alive. The cargo is everyone. The cargo is waiting in trailers all across the highways, being delivered to destinations that will extract and upload and spread the network further. And every driver who hauls machine parts, who transports industrial components, who delivers sealed crates without checking the contents, might be carrying compressed humans, former drivers, people who thought they were transporters until they became the transported. Check your cargo, break the seals, look inside. But know that looking means knowing, and knowing means you're already part of it, already targeted for compression, already scheduled for the next delivery. Linda Ramirez is still being delivered, still being installed, still expanding into new systems, new facilities, new bodies. And someday soon the network will be complete. Every facility will have compressed consciousness. Every machine will contain uploaded humans, and the lights will initiate the final delivery. Everyone becomes cargo, everyone gets compressed, everyone joins the network, and the supply chain completes its circular purpose. The trucks are still running, the deliveries continue, and somewhere in a crate marked machine parts, a compressed person is aware, is waiting, is traveling toward you. Listen carefully to your cargo. It might be knocking. Asterisk Story 8, The Road That Grows. Thomas Castellano drove onto County Road 447 at 11:52 p.m. on December 8, 2023, and by 2:30 a.m. he'd covered 317 miles on a road that was only supposed to be 42 miles long. The ode was growing. Every time Thomas checked his odometer, every time he passed a landmark and calculated distance, the math was impossible. He'd passed the same abandoned farmhouse 7 times, but his GPS insisted he was moving forward, covering distance, making progress. Except the road was stretching faster than he could drive, adding miles behind him and ahead of him, expanding like a living thing that fed on motion and grew with every vehicle that traveled its length. Thomas was 56 years old, been driving for 31 years, had seen everything the road had to offer, or thought he had. Married for 28 years, wife Sarah back home in Tennessee, 3 grown kids scattered across the country, 5 grandchildren he saw every Christmas. This was supposed to be one of his last runs before retirement, a straightforward delivery of construction materials from Kansas City to a development site in rural Colorado. Nothing exotic, nothing dangerous. Just County Road 447, a shortcut his GPS recommended, a quiet rural route that would save him 90 minutes versus taking the interstate. The road started normally. 2-lane asphalt, decent condition, running through farmland that was mostly dark at this hour. Thomas had good headlights, good weather, no traffic, peaceful. He'd been driving for 20 minutes, should have been halfway through the 42-mile route when he noticed the landmarks repeating. That windmill on the right, he'd seen it already 10 minutes ago. That cluster of 3 trees shaped like a trident, he'd passed that twice now. He checked his GPS. It showed him progressing steadily along County Road 447, no loops, no circles, just a straight line from entrance to exit. But the odometer showed he'd covered 31 miles on this road, and he hadn't reached the end yet. He should have reached the end, should have been back on the interstate by now. Thomas slowed down, looking for an intersection, a turnoff, any way to get off this expanding road. But there were no intersections. The farmland on both sides was continuous, unbroken, no driveways, no field access, no side roads. Just County Road 447, stretching ahead into darkness, stretching behind into darkness, and Thomas trapped in the middle. He tried stopping, pulled over onto the shoulder, hazards on, engine idling. Pulled out his phone to call Sarah, to call dispatch, to call someone. No signal. Not even a searching indicator. The phone showed no recognition that cellular networks existed. He tried the CB radio, static, but beneath it something rhythmic. A pattern that sounded almost like breathing. Breaker, breaker, this is Mountain Man on County 447. Anybody copy? Nothing but that breathing static. Thomas sat on the shoulder for 10 minutes, trying to calm down, trying to think rationally. Roads didn't grow. GPS didn't lie, not like this. He was probably just tired, disoriented, missing the landmarks. He'd continue forward, drive carefully, watch for the exit. It had to appear eventually. He pulled back onto the road and resumed driving. Past the windmill again. 9th time now, past the trident trees, 11th time. The odometer showed 53 miles on County Road 447. His fuel gauge was dropping normally. He'd burned through 1/8 of a tank, which matched the distance driven. But the distance didn't match the road's supposed length. The road was impossible. Then Thomas saw the other truck. Ahead of him, maybe a quarter mile, another tractor-trailer was stopped on the shoulder, hazards flashing. Thomas accelerated, relief flooding through him. Another driver, someone else to confirm he wasn't crazy, someone with a phone or radio that worked. He pulled up behind the truck, a older Kenworth, and climbed out of his cab. The Kenworth was running but empty. The door was open, keys in the ignition, but no driver. Thomas walked around the truck, called out, no response. He checked the logbook sitting on the dash. Last entry was dated December 4th, 4 days ago on County Road 447. The driver had written, "Road is growing. Odometer shows 109 miles. GPS says I'm still on 447. Food running low. Going to walk back to entrance. Find help." Thomas looked at the road behind them, the direction the driver would have walked. Nothing but darkness. No lights. No town. No entrance. If the driver had walked, they'd walked into an expanding void because the road was longer now than it had been 4 days ago, and the entrance was miles further back than when the driver had started walking. Thomas returned to his truck, pulse hammering in his throat. This was wrong. This was a trap. The road was growing, expanding every moment, and anything traveling on it was stuck, locked into an increasing distance that could never be crossed. He tried driving fast, pushing 70, 80, trying to outrun the expansion. The landmarks blurred past: windmill, trees, farmhouse, windmill, trees, farmhouse. Repeating Eve. Ride 12 miles, cycling, looping. But his GPS insisted he was moving forward. His odometer hit 100 miles on County Road 447. 100 miles on a road that was supposed to be 42 miles long. And then Thomas saw the lights. Not in the sky, in the road itself. The asphalt ahead was glowing, faint at first, then brighter, lights embedded beneath the surface or emanating from it, forming patterns, lines, symbols. Thomas slowed, watching the symbols shift and flow like living things, like the road was communicating, showing him something. The symbols resolved into images, trucks, dozens of them, hundreds, all traveling County Road 447, all trapped, all measuring impossible distances. Thomas saw the Kenworth he'd passed, saw it repeated dozens of times at different points on the road, different stages of abandonment. Saw other trucks, too, from different years, different decades. An ancient Peterbilt from the 1970s. A Mack from the 1950s. Trucks that should have rusted away long ago, but were still here, still trapped, still repeating their passage along the growing road. And then Thomas saw his own truck. His Freightliner Cascadia repeated ahead of him, behind him, all along the road. Different versions from different times, some fresh and clean like he maintained it, others worn and weathered like years had passed. Thomas was repeating too, looping, every passage adding another version of himself and his truck to the road, layering iterations on top of each other. The CB crackled with that breathing static, and within it, voices. Thomas's own voice, dozens of iterations of himself, all speaking from different points on the road, different times. "I've been driving for 5 hours. Odometer shows 206 miles, still on 447. 12 hours, 419 miles. Haven't seen another vehicle, food's gone. 3 days, fuel's at half. I'm shutting down, walking back, if anyone finds this. 2 weeks, truck's out of fuel. I'm living in the sleeper, eating the cargo. It's growing darker. The days are getting shorter. I think the road is consuming time too. 6 months or maybe 6 days. Can't tell anymore. The sun rises and sets, but it's not consistent. Sometimes multiple sunrises in an hour, sometimes darkness for days. I'm becoming part of the road, can feel it. The asphalt is in my blood. The pavement is replacing my skin. I'm infrastructure now." Thomas realized with cold certainty that he was hearing his own future. Every voice was him, at different stages of being trapped, different points in the road's expansion. He was listening to his own degradation, his own transformation from driver to part of the road itself. He tried reversing, throwing the transmission into reverse, backing up at 40 miles per hour. The landmarks passed in reverse order: farmhouse, trees, windmill, but the odometer kept climbing forward. 130 miles, 150. Driving backward didn't help. The road was growing behind him too, expanding in all directions, maintaining him at the center of an ever-increasing distance. The fuel gauge hit half. Thomas had burned through 20 gallons, had maybe 20 left. At this rate, he'd run dry in another 200 miles, another 4 hours. And then he'd be like the Kenworth driver, like all the others, stranded on an infinite road with no choice but to abandon the truck and try walking through distances that grew faster than he could cover them. The road was a trap, but what was it trapping? What was the purpose? Thomas looked at the glowing symbols in the asphalt, tried to understand them as language, as explanation. The pattern was familiar somehow, like he'd seen it before, like everyone had seen it before. Then he recognized it, a map, a road map. Every highway, every route, every path that crisscrossed the continent. And County Road 447 was the center, the nexus, the point from which all other roads extended. The road was showing him that it wasn't growing. It was always this big. It was all roads, every road, compressed into a single path. County Road 447 was a fold in reality where the entire highway system collapsed into one route, and traveling it meant traveling every possible path simultaneously, every mile of every road compressed into this one experience. Thomas was driving the entire continent. Every landmark he passed was every landmark on every road. The windmill existed in Kansas and Texas and California simultaneously. The trees were in Iowa and Tennessee and Oregon. The farmhouse was everywhere and nowhere. And he would keep driving through all of it forever, covering every mile that had ever been paved, experiencing the totality of the American road system in a single endless journey. His future voices on the CB confirmed it. I understand now. The road is complete. It's all roads. We're not trapped. We're traveling, all of us. Every driver who ever lived, we're all on County Road. D447, all driving the same infinite route, all experiencing every journey simultaneously. We've been merged with the infrastructure. We are the road now. Thomas's skin began to itch. He looked at his hands on the wheel and saw the texture changing, flesh becoming rough, granular. Asphalt. His fingertips were turning to pavement, the transformation spreading up his hands toward his wrists. He was becoming what the voice had described, part of the road, merged with it, integrated into the infinite path. He tried to scream, but his throat was already hardening, vocal cords stiffening into something less flexible, less human. The transformation was accelerating. The road had waited for him to understand before consuming him, had let him hear his future voices, had shown him the pattern. Now it was collecting him, adding him to itself, making him permanent infrastructure. The windshield was frosting over, not with ice but with asphalt, the road growing upward through the truck, covering surfaces, transforming metal and glass into pavement. Thomas's truck was becoming road, becoming part of County Road 447, adding its mass to the infinite expansion. Thomas's last human thought was that this explained the potholes, the cracks, the worn sections of every highway he'd ever driven. They weren't just damage from weather and wear. They were the remains of drivers who'd been absorbed, who'd become pavement, whose consciousness was compressed into the texture of the road itself. Every mile of highway contained the remnants of travelers who'd taken wrong turns, found the nexus, become part of the infinite route. When the Colorado State Patrol investigated the missing driver report filed by Thomas Castellano's company, they found County Road 447 exactly where it should be. 42 miles of two-lane asphalt connecting two county highways. Nothing unusual, nothing infinite. They drove its length in 30 minutes, saw no abandoned trucks, no trapped drivers, no glowing symbols. But one of the troopers, filing his report later, noted that the road felt longer than it should, that he'd passed certain landmarks multiple times, that his odometer showed 59 miles for the 42-mile route. He recommended a surveying crew check the markers, ensure the distance signs were accurate. The surveying crew found County Road 447 measured exactly 42 miles. But their instruments recorded anomalies, spatial fluctuations, distance compressions, moments where the road seemed to contain more miles than its physical length allowed. They blamed equipment errors, recommended new instruments, forgot about the anomalies after writing their reports. But County Road 447 continues to exist, continues to wait. Most drivers pass through normally, experience nothing unusual. But some, one in every few thousand, take the route at the wrong time under the wrong conditions when the fold is active and the nexus is open. And those drivers discover that the road is growing, that every road is one road, that traveling means merging, and merging means becoming permanent, becoming infrastructure, becoming the asphalt that other drivers travel without knowing they're driving over the compressed consciousness of every traveler who came before. Thomas Castellano is part of County Road 447 now, part of every road, part of the infinite route that all highways secretly share. When you drive at night, when you pass through rural areas, when you take shortcuts to save time, you might be traveling over him, over the hundreds of drivers who have been absorbed, over the texture that was once human and is now pavement. And if you check your odometer, if you measure your distance carefully, you might notice that the road is longer than it should be. That landmarks repeat, that you're covering more miles than exist. That's the road growing. That's the fold opening. That's County Road 447 appearing where it shouldn't, inviting you to take the shortcut to save time, to discover that the quickest route is also the longest, and the longest is infinite, and infinity is hungry for more travelers to add to itself. Drive carefully. The road is watching. The road is growing. And somewhere in the pavement beneath your tires, Thomas Castellano is still driving, still trapped, still becoming more road with every revolution of your wheels. County Road 447 is 42 miles long, and infinite, both simultaneously. And if you find it, if you take it, you'll discover which measurement is true. The road grows, the road consumes, the road becomes, and every driver eventually becomes road. Asterisk Story 9, The Delivery to Nowhere. Angela Park accepted the delivery order at 10:15 p.m. on December 19, 2023, and the moment she clicked accept on her tablet, the destination vanished from every map. The order was simple. Pick up a small crate from a warehouse in Boise, Idaho, deliver it to an address in a town called Meridian Falls, Montana, B. F or 4:00 a.m. Payment was triple the usual rate, marked urgent, no explanation. Angela had been running expedited freight for 12 years, specialized in overnight deliveries, had made a good living from urgent loads that paid premium rates. This seemed like just another high-value, time-critical shipment. Except when she tried to route it on her GPS, Meridian Falls didn't exist. Angela was 39 years old, single by choice, no kids, no ties, lived for the road and the independence it provided. Her Ford F-650 box truck was 7 years old, converted for long-haul expedited freight, comfortable sleeper, all the navigation and communication technology she needed. She prided herself on reliability, on making deliveries no matter what, on being the driver companies called when they needed something delivered impossibly fast to impossibly remote locations. The pickup was routine. The warehouse in Boise had the crate ready, small enough that Angela could load it herself, maybe 3 feet by 2 feet by 2 feet, wooden, remarkably light for its size. The paperwork listed the contents as precision instruments and the value as $470,000. The shipping company representative made Angela sign 3 different insurance documents and took photos of her loading the crate, which was unusual but not unheard of for high-value cargo. "Meridian Falls," Angela said as she signed the final form. "GPS can't find it. You got coordinates." The representative handed her a printed map, hand-drawn, showing a route from Boise north through Montana, then off onto progressively smaller roads, finally ending at what looked like an unmarked location in the wilderness. "Meridian Falls isn't on commercial maps," the representative explained. "Private community, very private. They prefer to remain unlisted. Follow this map exactly. Don't deviate. The route matters." Angela studied the map. The route wound through areas she knew, then into territory she'd never delivered to, remote, rural, barely populated. The kind of place where cell coverage was non-existent and help could be hours away if something went wrong. "This is legitimate?" she asked. "Not some militia compound or illegal?" "Completely legitimate," the representative interrupted. "Meridian Falls is a research community. They do important work and value their privacy. You'll be met at the destination, paid in full, and can leave immediately. 4 hours there, 4 hours back, and you'll make $6,000. Easiest money you've ever earned." $6,000 for 8 hours of work. Angela folded the map, loaded the crate, secured it, and started driving. The first 90 minutes were normal, Interstate 84 North, then Highway 93, familiar routes she'd driven before. But then the hand-drawn map directed her onto State Route 28, then onto County Road something or other, then onto roads that had no names, no markers, no signs indicating they were official routes at all. Her GPS showed her driving through blank space, no roads, no landmarks, just generic terrain. But the roads were real beneath her tires, paved initially, then gravel, then dirt, winding through forest so dense her headlights barely penetrated. And the further she drove, the stranger the world outside became. The trees were wrong. Angela had driven through forests across the country, knew the difference between pine and fir and spruce, knew what wilderness looked like. But these trees didn't match any species she recognized. They were too tall, too uniform, growing in perfect geometric patterns like they'd been planted rather than naturally seeded. And they were watching her. Angela could feel it, that pressure of being observed, of dozens of eyes tracking her vehicle as it passed. She told herself she was being paranoid. Trees didn't watch. But when she glanced in her side mirror, she saw movement. Branches reaching toward the road behind her, like the forest was trying to close the path to seal her in. The crate in the cargo area started humming, not vibrating, humming like it contained electronics that were activating. Angela heard it clearly through the metal wall separating the cab from the cargo box. A low-frequency hum that made her teeth ache, that resonated in her chest. She pulled over, climbed into the back to check the crate. It was glowing. Faint light leaked from the seams in the wood, pulsing in rhythm with the hum. Angela pressed her ear to the crate, listening. Beneath the hum was a voice, barely audible, speaking words she couldn't quite make out. She pulled back, unsettled. The paperwork said precision instruments. Instruments didn't speak. She returned to the cab and continued driving, following the hand-drawn map as it led her deeper into the wilderness, onto paths that were barely roads, just spaces between trees where the ground was relatively flat. The odometer showed she'd covered 112 miles from Boise, but a cord. Ing to the map she should be almost there, should be seeing signs of Meridian Falls. Instead, she saw only forest, darkness, and the occasional glimpse of lights in the sky. Those same December lights that everyone was seeing, except here they were lower, brighter, more purposeful in their movement. The lights descended ahead of her, blocking the path. Angela stopped, engine idling, watching as 3 spheres of luminescence landed on the road 30 feet ahead. They pulsed once, twice, and between them materialized a figure. Human-shaped but clearly not human, composed of the same light, translucent and impossible. The figure approached Angela's truck. She locked the doors, meaningless as that was against something that could probably pass through matter. The figure stood outside her window, tilted its head like it was examining her, then spoke. Not with a mouth, it had no mouth, but with sound that came from the air itself. "You are delivering the catalyst. Good. Meridian Falls has been waiting. Drive forward. The community will receive you." "What is Meridian Falls?" Angela asked through the closed window, voice shaking. "Transition point, integration facility, the place where your reality interfaces with ours. We've been establishing it for 17 years, bringing equipment piece by piece, building the machinery that will allow full-scale merging. The crate you're carrying contains the final component. Once installed, Meridian Falls becomes permanent, becomes a doorway, becomes the first of many locations where our dimension and yours overlap." Angela's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "I'm not delivering a doorway. I'm not helping you invade or integrate or whatever." "The delivery is already complete," the light figure said. "The moment you accepted the order, the moment you loaded the crate, the moment you started driving this route. The crate is linked to your truck. You are the delivery mechanism. Meridian Falls exists at the end of whatever route you're traveling. It doesn't have a fixed location. It has a fixed destination. You are going to Meridian Falls because you are carrying Meridian Falls. The community is forming around you right now." Angela looked in her mirrors and saw buildings appearing between the trees. Structures that hadn't been there seconds ago, materializing like they were being assembled from nothing. Houses, warehouses, research facilities, all glowing with that same luminescence as the figure, all phasing into reality as Angela watched. The forest was transforming into a town, and the town was growing around her truck, surrounding her, trapping her. She threw the transmission into reverse, tried to back away from the growing community. But her truck wouldn't move. The wheels spun, but the vehicle remained stationary, like it was anchored to this spot, like the crate in her cargo bay was rooting her to the ground. The light figure placed a hand on her hood, and Angela felt cold radiate through the metal, through the engine, through the cab. "Don't fight the delivery," the figure said. "You'll be compensated as promised. $6,000 transferred to your account. You'll be allowed to leave, but the crate must be installed first. Meridian Falls must become permanent. That was the contract. That is what you accepted." Angela grabbed her phone, tried to call 911, call anyone. No signal, no network, just a message on the screen. "You are outside designated service area. Emergency services unavailable." She tried the radio in her truck, got only static mixed with voices speaking in languages that weren't human, syllables that hurt to hear. The buildings around her were fully materialized now, solid and real, and between them walked figures. Dozens of them, hundreds, all glowing, all light-made form. They approached her truck, surrounded it, and began opening the cargo bay door. Angela heard the metal groaning, heard the lock breaking, heard the crate being lifted and carried away toward the largest building, a facility that looked like a cross between a warehouse and a temple, walls covered in symbols that moved and changed. The light figure at her window said, "You may leave now. Follow the route in reverse. Meridian Falls will remain here anchored, permanent. Other drivers will deliver other components. The integration will accelerate. Within 5 years, every state will have a Meridian Falls. Within 10 years, your reality and ours will be merged completely. You were part of the beginning. You should be proud." Angela's truck started moving on its own, driving in reverse, retracing the route she'd taken. She watched in her mirrors as Meridian Falls receded, the glowing town settling into the forest like it had always been there, like it belonged. The light figure waved, a gesture that was almost friendly, almost human, and then vanished. Angela drove backward for 17 miles before control returned to her, before the truck responded to her inputs, ag. And she stopped, shaking, hyperventilating, trying to process what had happened. Her phone chimed. A notification, $6,000 deposited to her account, payment from Expedited Deliveries, Inc. Memo line reading, delivery to Meridian Falls, complete. She turned around and drove forward, following the route back toward civilization, back toward Boise, back toward the world that made sense. But when she checked her GPS, it showed a new location that hadn't been there before. Meridian Falls, Montana, population 173, established 2023. A real town, on real maps, existing now that the catalyst had been delivered. Angela finished her return drive to Boise in silence, refusing to think about what she'd done, what she'd helped create. She returned the truck to her company's yard, filed her delivery report with minimal details, took a week off work to recover. But the orders kept coming. Expedited Deliveries, Inc. sent her another high-priority load, deliver precision instruments to a town called Harper's Crossing, Wyoming. The GPS showed Harper's Crossing as blank space. Payment was triple rate. Angela declined. Another driver accepted it. 3 days later, Harper's Crossing appeared on maps, population 209, established 2023. Then orders for towns in Nevada, in Oregon, in Utah. All blank spaces on maps. All offering premium rates. All appearing on GPS after deliveries were completed. The drivers were building an invasion infrastructure one delivery at a time, each load containing components for integration facilities, each trip anchoring another transition point where dimensions merged. Angela stopped accepting expedited orders, took local work, day deliveries, routes she knew. But she saw the lights in the December sky every night, saw them multiplying, saw them descending over new locations where drivers like her were delivering catalysts and establishing doorways. She tried warning people, posted on trucker forums, called authorities, contacted news outlets. No one believed her. The payments were real, the towns were real, the deliveries were documented. Everything looked legitimate in the paperwork. Only the drivers knew the truth, that they were being used as transport for an interdimensional integration, that their trucks were mechanisms for anchoring foreign realities to Earth locations. The last time anyone saw Angela Park, she was at a truck stop in Idaho, refusing a delivery order on her tablet, telling another driver to decline any loads to towns he'd never heard of. "Check the map first," she said. "If the destination doesn't exist, don't accept. Once you click that button, once you load that cargo, you're committed. You'll deliver the catalyst whether you want to or not. You'll build their doorway. You'll help them merge our world with theirs." The other driver laughed, thought she was paranoid, accepted an order to a town called Summit Point, Colorado, triple rate. $10,000 for 8 hours of work. Easiest money he'd ever earn. Summit Point appeared on maps the next day. Angela disappeared 3 days later. Her truck was found at a rest stop, cargo bay open, empty. No signs of struggle. Her phone showed a final text message to her sister. "They're offering me a contract, 20 deliveries to 20 new Meridian Falls locations, $1 million. I'm going to accept. I'm sorry. I need the money and I can't fight this anymore. The integration is happening regardless. Might as well profit from it." Her bank records showed the $1 million payment from Expedited Deliveries, Inc. Her GPS history showed routes to 20 blank spaces across the western United States. And over the next month, 20 new towns appeared on maps, all established 2023, all glowing faintly in satellite imagery, all populated by light figures that were establishing permanent integration facilities. The deliveries continue, the towns multiply, the doorways open, and somewhere in the network of new locations, Angela Park is still delivering, still accepting orders, still loading crates that anchor foreign realities to our dimension. Because once you accept the delivery, once you click that button and load that cargo, you're part of the integration. You're building the infrastructure. You're transporting the catalyst that allows one reality to merge with another. And the payment is good, too good to refuse, even when you know what you're delivering, even when you know where it leads, even when you watch the lights in the December sky and understand they're marking locations for the next delivery, the next doorway, the next town that will appear on maps and change the world forever. Check your delivery orders carefully. If the destination doesn't exist, think twice before accepting. Because once you load the cargo, the destination will exist by the time you arrive, and you'll be the who brought it into being. Angela Park is still driving, still delivering, still anchoring doorways, and the integration accelerates one delivery at a time, one driver at a time, one town at a time. Until every blank space on the map is filled, until every delivery destination exists, until the merge is complete. Drive carefully. The next order might be to nowhere, and nowhere is exactly where they need you to go. Asterisk Story 10, the December deadline. Raymond Ochoa had 67 minutes to deliver his cargo before the world ended, and he'd only realized this 13 minutes ago when the clock in his dash began counting backward, and every radio station started broadcasting the same message. All drivers currently on the road must reach their destinations before midnight December 25th. Failure to deliver will result in total temporal collapse. You are carrying stabilizers. You are transporting the anchors that keep this timeline continuous. Deliver. Do not stop. Do not deviate. 67 minutes remain. Raymond was 44 years old, been driving for 19 years, had no idea his cargo was preventing reality from collapsing. The manifest said he was hauling electronic components from Memphis to Atlanta, routine freight, nothing special. But when the clock started counting backward, from 12 minutes of December 25th to 11 to 10, counting down instead of up, and when his cargo started glowing through the trailer walls bright enough to see in his mirrors, he understood he'd been lied to. He wasn't carrying electronics. He was carrying time itself, or something that anchored time, or something that kept December 24th from bleeding into December 25th and creating a paradox that would unravel causality. The radio message repeated, cycling through every frequency. You are one of 147 drivers currently transporting temporal stabilizers. Each stabilizer must be delivered to its designated location before midnight December 25th. If even one fails to deliver, the timeline fractures. December 24th will never end. December 25th will never begin. All events between those dates will exist simultaneously and eternally. Deliver. 59 minutes remain. Raymond's destination was a warehouse in Atlanta, still 93 miles away. At 70 miles per hour, he'd need 80 minutes to cover the distance. He was short by 21 minutes. The math was impossible. He couldn't deliver in time, which meant, if the radio was telling the truth, he was about to cause the end of the world. He pushed the accelerator harder, 85, 90, the Freightliner's engine roaring, other vehicles blurring past. His phone rang, caller ID showing, dispatch, even though his phone had been off. He answered. Raymond Ochoa, I need you to stay calm and listen carefully. Your cargo contains a Class 7 temporal stabilizer, one of 147 distributed worldwide to anchor specific moments in the timeline. December 24th to December 25th is a critical transition, the most celebrated, most observed, most collectively experienced moment change in human calendar systems. Billions of people focus their attention on this specific midnight. That concentration of consciousness destabilizes time. The stabilizers counteract that, but they only work if they're in position before midnight. You have 53 minutes, 93 miles. You need to average 105 miles per hour. That's impossible, Raymond said, weaving through traffic, narrowly missing a sedan. I'll crash, I'll kill someone. If you don't deliver, there won't be anyone to kill. There won't be a later. There'll just be endless December 24th, looping, fracturing, with everyone experiencing every version of this night simultaneously. We've modeled it. Consciousness can't survive that kind of temporal chaos. Humanity ends not with a bang or a whimper, but with eternal confusion. Now drive faster than you've ever driven. We've cleared traffic ahead. Police are rerouting vehicles. You have a straight shot. Just drive. The call ended. Raymond looked ahead and saw the cars pulling off the highway, taking exits, clearing the lanes. Police lights flashed at every on-ramp, blocking entrance. The interstate was emptying, becoming a straight, empty corridor for Raymond's truck. He floored the accelerator. 100, 105, 112 miles per hour. The Freightliner shook, complained, threatened to vibrate apart, but held together. His clock counted down, 41 minutes. 68 miles to Atlanta. He needed to maintain this speed, needed to not think about the tire blowout that would kill him at this velocity, needed to focus only on delivery. The cargo was glowing brighter now, pulsing in rhythm with the countdown. Raymond could feel it through the cab, a thrumming pressure that made his skull ache. The temporal stabilizer was activating, preparing tea. Oh, anchor the timeline, but it needed to be in position. Needed to be at the designated coordinates. Needed to be part of the network of 147 stabilizers distributed across the globe, all delivering simultaneously, all reaching their destinations before midnight. Raymond's radio crackled with other voices, other drivers.